Good evening. Welcome to the Southbridge School Committee meeting of Tuesday, October 14th, 2014. Please rise and join the school committee in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now is the time in the meeting where we have public input. If there's anybody from the public who would like to address the school committee this evening, please step forward. Seeing none, we will call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Congdon?
Present.
Mr. Olivo?
Present.
Dr. Page?
Present.
Mrs. Donovan?
Present.
Mrs. Quinney?
Present.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Present.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Present.
All present.
Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item 5, which is the approval of minutes. First, we're going to approve the regular school committee meeting minutes of September 23rd, 2014. These minutes have been disseminated for school committee review. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Mr. Abrahamson.
Yes, Madam Chair, on page 8, under the member forum, I know I didn't state. He further stated that Southbridge is one of the easiest places for teachers to exercise their craft. I believe a "not" is missing in front of the word "one."
Okay.
It's not one of the easiest
Page
places.
8.
And in that same paragraph, he further thanked all the principals, and it should say, and their staffs for successful open houses. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other corrections to the minutes? Then I'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes with those corrections. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Abrahamson makes the motion. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Mrs. Congdon. Any further discussion? Seeing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
All yes.
Thank you. Next, we have the Committee of the Whole minutes of October 6, 2014. These minutes were also disseminated for committee review. Are there any corrections to these minutes? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Mr. Abrahamson makes a motion. Do I have a second? Seconded by Mrs. Congdon. There's no further discussion. May I have a roll call, please?
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
All yes.
Thank you. I try to move this along quickly for everybody. I just have a few short announcements. First, and this will be news to my school committee members because it just recently occurred that Councilor Moriarty had contacted me regarding a joint meeting for the school committee and the town council and we've tentatively agreed on the date of Thursday, October 30th at 7 p.m. But if that's a conflict for a large number of people, if you could let me know. And also, if there are any items you would like to appear on that agenda, if you could forward those either to me or Mr. Moriarty at your earliest convenience, that would be great. Tomorrow, the Associate Commissioner of Education, Russell Johnston, Board of Education member David Roach, and Senator Richard Moore will be visiting the district. The school committee has been invited to meet with these individuals after their tour of the middle high school, and Superintendent Gardner, I believe, will provide a little more information during her report, but I wanted to make you aware. And finally, just something that happened only a few hours ago. It came to my attention that a male student from Southbridge Middle High School, without hesitation today, came to the aid of an elderly gentleman who had fallen near a bus stop. He jumped off the bus and went to assist this individual. For privacy reasons, I can't disclose a student's name, but I've already spoken to Principal Earls to convey what I was told in the hopes that she can personally acknowledge the student's very good deed. So we have some very nice kids, and they deserve acknowledgement. Next, we'll move on to reports. We have a report of the Student Advisory Committee. Mr. Boisvert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will give my report during the student presentation. However, I do have some pamphlets about our school and some Pioneer pencils to pass out to all of you.
Oh, thank you. We like gifts. Under $50.
Thank you.
These are priceless.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll look forward to hearing your report a little later. Next, we'll move on to Agenda Item 8, School Committee Reports. First is the Curriculum Subcommittee. Mrs. Donovan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Curriculum Subcommittee met on Wednesday, September 24th. Present were members Mrs. Donovan, Mrs. Abrahamson, and Dr. Page. Also in attendance was our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, Ms. Cheryl Stanton, Mrs. Jill Congdon as a community member, and Mr. Wally McKenzie, also a community member. We first approved the meeting minutes of our August 13th subcommittee meeting. Next, we moved on to discuss the implementation and content of our newly accepted Accelerated Improvement Plan. Ms. Stanton provided us with a copy of the Southbridge Public Schools AIP Progress Management Tool. And basically, this is a punch list that has been extracted from the AIP that provides the activities that needed to be done, that are required to be done in order for us to achieve the expected outcomes in our AIP. The tool further discusses what the activity is, who will conduct the activity, when the activity will start, and when the activity will end. And it also has a note section too, so that we can keep track that activities are being done, or if there's still further progress to do, that can be noted in the note section. Ms. Stanton also informed the committee that we also have some new people that have been assigned to our school district from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education relative to our AIP. We have two new plan managers. One is Ms. Sally Diaz, and the other is Mr. Paul Jackman. And we have a new plan monitor, Mr. Pat Williams. The public will be introduced to these people, I believe, at our next meeting. We then further went on to discuss further issues within that management tool that the administration will be looking at, and those included looking at rolling out our ELA and math curriculums, providing feedback to teachers after learning walks are conducted, and also to re-examine how our students in K-1 can be assessed via the ANET testing. We then looked at our progress on the district ELL program. We know that we have a new ELL/literacy person on board. So we looked at what has been taking place in the ELL program so far. We looked at the flow chart that is done when a new student comes in and is recognized of whether or not they need requirements. Mr. McKenzie was asking if there was a subcommittee that oversees parental involvement, and he's looking for ways to have parents become more involved and cooperative with their student learning. And Ms. Stanton was kind enough to point out to us that one of the activities in that AIP management tool is in fact an academic support workshop that we would like to get going for families so that the study skills can be transferred into the home. Also relative to that, Mrs. Congdon had stated that our Family and Community Engagement Subcommittee had conducted a survey last year, conducting about 380 families, K through 12, and we found that as a result of that survey, the two main items that parents were most concerned about was first receiving help to help their children with their homework, and they were also looking to have a parent liaison at Eastford Road School, because at that time currently that position does not exist. We talked about our sheltered immersion classes. Those are classes for content teachers who have ELL students in their class, so we learned some more about what those classes entail and the type of work that's being done in those. And then we had our member forum. At that time, Dr. Page, we talked about really getting to the root of some of the problems that lie within our classrooms, and again, we were very, very focused on trying to find objective best practices so that we can solve some of the issues that are still relevant in our classrooms. And then finally, Mr. Abrahamson was kind enough to provide us with the 2014-2015 Superintendent's Checklist, which is something that is created by the Mass Commissioner of Education. And again, it kind of gives everybody a checklist of who should be doing what and when. And our meeting adjourned that evening at 8 p.m. Now, tomorrow, we have our next curriculum subcommittee meeting that has been posted for 6:30 p.m. tomorrow evening in room M115 at Cole Ave. And main topics of that agenda is, again, to get an update on our accelerated improvement plan, to get an update on our ELL program. There's a nice article that was in the paper last week about West Street School with United Teach, so we look to get some information about that. We're going to talk about some of our new reading programs and also a new, or it's not new, but we want to explore a curriculum instruction assessment tool known as Edwin. So that's tomorrow night at 6:30. And I think that's it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Donovan. You also are chairing the Ad Hoc Superintendent Evaluation Committee. Do you have a report?
Yes. So we've been busy with this. Our last meeting was September 24th. Present at that, we met at 9 a.m. On September 24th. Present at that meeting were members, myself, Mr. Abrahamson, and Mrs. Congdon. Also present was our Superintendent, Patricia Gardner. We approved our meeting minutes from September 17th, and then we moved on into the evaluation tool itself. Ms. Gardner presented us with her professional learning goal, a student learning goal, and 2 district improvement learning goals. So we took a closer look at those. We talked about the evaluation cycle again, and really dug in deep on her 4 goals. And what was presented and what was discussed was approved by the committee, and therefore we sent her back with more homework to present to us at her next meeting, which would be her benchmarks and key actions. So that meeting adjourned at 10:25 a.m. So moving from there, we had a follow-up superintendent evaluation ad hoc subcommittee meeting on October 1st. Again, I was present with members Mr. Abrahamson and Mrs. Congdon, and also in attendance was Patricia Gardner, our superintendent, our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, Ms. Cheryl Stanton, and our Director of Student Affairs, Mr. Walter Solzak. We met at 5:45 p.m. We approved our meeting minutes from September 24th, and then again got into the evaluation piece. Ms. Gardner spent some time just bringing us up to date of what the new superintendent induction program looks like, and how a lot of what is required of her in that program coexist with what we're trying to do here. So that's a good thing. So she went through some of the things that she is required to do as a result of that induction program. And then we actually went through her 4 goals again, and then looked at the action plans, benchmarks, and timelines that she submitted. We spent quite a bit of time on this. The 3 of us, Mr. Abrahamson, myself, and Mrs. Congdon, felt that we thought it looked really, really good, so we have a motion to bring it to the committee tonight. So I've made copies for the rest of the subcommittee members who are not on our committee. You can take a look at it. We'll be meeting again next Wednesday at 10 a.m. So for the fellow committee members, take a look at it, see what you think, and if there's anything that you would like to talk about or that jumps out at you, please be sure to let me know, and then that is something that we can further discuss when we meet next week. Again, that is October 22nd at 10 a.m. in room 115. And I believe that's it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. For the negotiations subcommittee, Mrs. Quinney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to talk about our negotiations that have concluded and a little bit about the contract that we're going to be signing later tonight with the SEA Unit C Educational Assistants. This is a 3-year contract. And the way we went about negotiations was a little bit different this time. It was a bit of a hybrid between what we have done in the past, which is known as positional bargaining, and interest-based bargaining. So what we did was a little bit of both, kind of a hybrid. Everyone at the table collaborated. We brought forward issues and challenges as well as problems that were facing the district that we hoped to come up with solutions for in order to maximize our resources and to meet the needs of all of our students. Overall, our negotiation sessions were, I believe, the starting point to moving forward to a culture of more collaboration, more trust, and respect between the staff, and in this instance, the educational assistants and the school committee, with a clear focus on ensuring that every student receives a high-quality education that provides them with the opportunity to meet their full potential. Part of the contract process within that, we reorganized from what used to be paras and tutors to a 4 tiers of educational assistants. So that was a big shift. We established job descriptions for educational assistants at each tier, Job descriptions for both paras and tutors were at least 20 years old in both those instances. In the past, paraprofessionals and tutors, the system was set up that the difference in pay between the highest step para and the first step tutor was $2.23. So what that meant was that tutors that were newly hired and new to the district would be receiving $2.23 more than paraprofessionals who had been with our district for 10 plus years. Then tutors at the top of the tutor salary grid were making more than first-year teachers, who in some instances, those teachers were supervising and directing the work of those tutors, while in addition to that being responsible for the education of the students in their classrooms, all reports, planning, grading, conferences, and other responsibilities associated with being a teacher. These differences led us to asking what additional job responsibilities, demands, or duties were required of tutors versus that of paraprofessionals. We were informed at the time that the differences between tutors and paraprofessionals were that tutors could substitute for a teacher, they had a college degree, and were required by contract to do less duties than paraprofessionals. We established a salary grid in which educational assistants are now compensated based on the majority of the responsibilities they have, the level of support they provide for students, and special training that has an impact on students. Based upon in which tier their job responsibilities would place them in, approximately 22 educational assistants, which were formerly known as tutors, were frozen at their last year's pay rate. And they'll be frozen at their pay rate until the new salary grid catches up with what they were being paid last year and will continue to get paid. Reorganizing in this way, we were able to avoid additional unemployment costs, as no one was laid off, nor did anyone have a reduction in their pay. The highest rate of pay on the current salary grid is also $3 less than the previous top of the previous tutor scale. The new salary grid establishes fairness and equity and will be a tool in keeping educational assistants, who we train in providing the support required to help some of our most involved students maximize their potential. So what had been happening in the past is that people would come to the district, get some experience, get trained in particular areas in order to support children with some significant special needs. They would take the training that we'd invested in them and then move on to a district in which they could get paid more money for those skills. In addition to that, the new pay scale recognizes the value, investment, dedication, and commitment that the educational assistants, formerly known as paraprofessionals, have on our students in our school district. We established an educational assistant evaluation tool. There's never been a tool to evaluate the work of previously paras or tutors in the past. In the past, paras were compensated an additional $22 an hour to substitute for a classroom teacher. With the new system, any Tier 1 or Tier 2 educational assistant who substitutes for the classroom teacher will be compensated up to an additional $3 per hour, or the equivalent of what a Tier 3 educational assistant at their same step would get. It is now a job responsibility of educational assistants in Tiers 3 and 4 to substitute when needed. This will allow some of the students who are most affected negatively by transition to experience less transition, as the substitute will be someone familiar with them, the routines of the classroom, and the functioning of their classrooms. We established a uniform workday of 6 hours of paid work with an additional half hour of unpaid lunch time. In the past, the workday varied by building and also individually, with some individuals being paid for up to 8 hours a day. This contract eliminates such inequities while ensuring all morning and afternoon duties are covered and the needs of our students are met. Educational assistants will also now have the opportunity to give input into what professional development topics and strategies will be covered during professional development days, thus maximizing the time used in professional development, as well as increasing student impact of the professional development. The contract meets the needs of the students in our classrooms, establishes accountability, values the educational assistants and the work that they do. It is financially responsible, not only with respect to our budget, but also to the town's budget as well. I believe this agreement will have a positive impact on the education of all of our students. The process to get here was not one without challenges, and we wouldn't be at this point tonight if it were not for the commitment and dedication to our students, their education, and to the Southbridge School Committee by everyone at the table. I would like to take this time to thank Shelley Como, Betty Jo Lisneski, Linda Bertrand, Becky Whitnicka, Elizabeth McNeil, Becky Hulick, Barbara Murphy, Lois Mason, former Superintendent Nemberko, Walter Solzak, Colleen Culligan, Superintendent Gardner, as well as the negotiation subcommittee members, Kara Donovan and Christopher Olivo. For without everyone's hard work and efforts and focus on students, we would not have been able to accomplish the reorganization that we have. Later tonight, we'll be signing this contract, and then moving forward, we will be looking into potential IBB training with the teachers union, as well as negotiating with the custodians and maintenance staff. And that is all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Quinney. Mrs. Quinney, do you have a report as the Sped PAC Liaison tonight?
I do. The Paint and Sip, or Paint and Social event at the Knights of Columbus on September 27th was a great success. I think everyone who attended had a good time, and many very colorful and different paintings of trees were accomplished, and money was also raised to benefit the Sped PAC moving forward. The next meeting of the Sped PAC will be October 16th, which is this Thursday at 6 p.m. in room M100. All are welcome to attend. The Sped PAC has undertaken a Yankee Candle fundraiser. Orders forms are due no later than October 22nd. They're also hosting a pumpkin event this Saturday from 1 to 4 at Cole Ave. The cost of that is $1 per pumpkin. If you haven't pre-registered, you can pay your fee at the door, and there's a limited number of pumpkins, so you want to get there right around 1. That is that, and all the money raised will again be put back into the Sped PAC to benefit kids, classrooms, and programs for children with special needs. I also wanted to make everyone aware that there will be a free after-school music and art therapy program for pre-K through grade 1. And so ages 3 to 6, and a caregiver must be present. It will start this Thursday, October 16th, from 3 to 3:45, and it will be at the Kennedy Donovan Center. If you would like to register, you can call 508-765-0292, and the office is open from 8 to 4 on Mondays through Fridays. Or you can email Robin Weber at rweber, W-E-B-E-R, @kdc.org. This will be led by Julie Hurley, who has a master's in art therapy and a bachelor's in music therapy. She's been providing music and art therapy groups for children and adults with special needs for the past 20 years. This program is possible through a grant that was acquired through a member of the Sped PAC through Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare. So anyone with kids ages 3 to 6 that is looking for some art and music therapy, starting this Thursday, 3 to 3:45 at Kennedy Donovan Center. It should be fun. And I believe that is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Quinney. Mrs. Congdon, do you have a report on the Family and Community Engagement Subcommittee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I do. The Family and Community Engagement Subcommittee met October 6th in room M100 on Cole Ave. Subcommittee members in attendance were myself, Mr. Abrahamson, and Mr. Olivo. Others in attendance were community member Mrs. Donovan. Our first item on the agenda was approving the minutes. Our second item was discussion regarding the month of the young adolescent. As we were meeting to discuss that at 7 o'clock, presentations of the young adolescent were being held at the town council meeting. We had a subcommittee meeting of the whole regarding the budget and MCAS that night, so we were unable to attend, but I wanted to say that a group of students from West Street School, Charlton Street School, and the middle high school were present with Mr. Wallace, as well as principals were in attendance as well. I don't know if people had an opportunity to watch the town council meeting from that evening, but the students did a great job in introducing themselves and explaining a little bit about themselves, which I think was a little tough for some of the students with their first time coming to the microphone, but I think they did a great job for their first time. And the town council did a proclamation regarding that month of the young adolescent. So I'd like to thank them for declaring October the month of the young adolescent. So we discussed that was happening. We also discussed during that on Wednesday, we'd be meeting with the new Student Advisory Council at 7 a.m., which is tomorrow, and discussing Student Government Day, which is coming up. The next item on our agenda was discussion regarding the month of November, being Family Literacy Month and Parent Volunteer Month. We discussed that we need to have a member of an administration present at all these meetings in order to have action steps take place. It was further discussed that the committee would like to possibly have a morning meeting to sit and meet with parent liaisons at West Street and Charlton Street School to get their feedback on involving community members. And then we had a discussion regarding community outreach. We talked about possibly going to the senior center, places like United Lens, the High Rise, and discussing, asking them maybe to come to the schools to volunteer, possibly listen to the children read or read to the children. We discussed possibly having middle school, high school tours for members of our community to come in and possibly tour the school and see what's happening in the school. We suggested that the community see that there is stability in the high school. And then we talked about speaking with the Student Advisory Council and maybe having the Rotary Club come in and get a tour of the school and maybe serve them lunch afterwards, which we were going to present at the Student Advisory Council School Committee meeting. And then during member open forum, we talked about that Thursday there would be a meeting at the YMCA, and Mr. Olivo said that he would attend to represent the FACE subcommittee, and then we adjourned the meeting. Our next meeting is Monday, November 3rd at 6:30 in room M100, and the agenda will be posted within the next couple of weeks. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. You had mentioned the Student Advisory Committee as part of your report. Is there anything else you want to add?
Yes, we have a meeting tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. at the middle school, high school, and that agenda includes for tomorrow discussion of conferences for the Student Advisory Council, discussion regarding the month of November being Family Literacy and Parent Involvement Month, and we'll be discussing with the Student Advisory Council policy JICA and JICJ, student dress code, and communication devices, and then we'll also be having an open discussion during that time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And it's up to me to report on policy, so I will just say that briefly, the committee met on October 1st. We discussed a consent agenda policy to make our meetings move along a little more efficiently. And since the adoption of a consent agenda would affect additional policies, we reviewed the meeting agenda and agenda format policies as well, and those have been referred to the full committee for their first readings this evening. The next policy meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, November 5th at 7 p.m. Thank you. So now we move on to presentations, the meat and the reason why we're all here tonight. So first, I'd like to call up, it's the Southbridge Middle High School Spotlight, and so Southbridge Middle High School students, including Mr. Boisvert, if you want to go to the podium.
So first we're going to talk about the good things that are going on at Southbridge Middle High School. This year we've had better structure. Things are going more smoothly with the administration, guidance. There's been less disciplinary reports, less students getting in trouble, which is better for academic purposes. The education has become more of the culture in Southbridge. We're worrying more about education. It's become more of the primary goal. And we're also trying to connect the middle school to the high school side so they could get ready for the high school life.
I would also like to reflect on homecoming. This year it was really, it was a success. It was very structured, and I didn't find any conflicts during it. So overall, I think if it keeps going like that every year, it will be a bigger thing as time goes by. And I did like homecoming this year. It was like, I thought it was the most successful homecoming we've had.
And also, we're going to talk about Thanksgiving. For Thanksgiving, we're going to have Spirit Week. On November 23rd is going to be Sketch Day, which is a Sunday, and it'll include students from grades 9 to 12. November 24th is Paint Night, where we paint the posters. November 25th is going to be the day of the pep rally, which will be from 12 to 2:15. And November 26th, will be the bonfire and the alumni game. There will be parades, and each class will be making a float.
Also at Paint Night and Drawing Day, each class is going to have 10 students that are well-behaved, attend it, and it's going to be very organized, and we're only going to choose the 10 best kids who behave and are interested in being part of it.
And we also have a poster of photos from homecoming. We'll pass it around to all of you if you want to see it.
I'm sorry, I just didn't ask you your name. I apologize.
It's Nady.
Nady? And what grade are you in, Nady?
I'm a senior.
You're a senior. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Look forward to seeing your poster. And next, the next presentation is on the MCAS results for the 2013-2014 school year. So at this time, I will turn the mic over to Superintendent Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are pleased tonight to present our 2013-2014 MCAS results to you. I guess I want to start it with sort of the reminder that since 2003, Southbridge has struggled with MCAS. We had one anomaly year in the high school that results did bounce up, and that did not last. And so for the past few years, we have trended with the state, but we weren't closing those gaps. This past year, as Superintendent Nimmercall guaranteed, we did see many gains. We saw the gaps closing in a lot of areas that had not been before. Before we present, I would just like to say again, which I have many times, when I first arrived last year, I found an incredible cadre of successful teachers who have loved working here and continue to love working here and have poured their heart into this system. And I wish you could see, if you're watching at home, the number of teachers who are here tonight, the number of administrators. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight, and I think it shows your dedication. I guess this is a reminder of Southbridge is in a marathon. We're not in a sprint. We're going as fast as we can to improve the things that we want to improve, but we want to do them right. We don't want an anomaly year where we have scores go incredibly high only to fall the next year. And I think the gains that we are now making are incremental and they're doable. And I think we have another year possibly too to pull ourselves out of the AIP. But with the work that we're doing, we are going to do that. And again, I want to really thank the teachers who have stuck in here. You know, we have, and I said this before, the opening day I asked for teachers to stand up, and it was astonishing to see the number of teachers who have stuck with Southbridge. And I think the number of turnovers at the administrative level have decimated the system. And we want to keep going with what we're doing. I've had numerous teachers in the past few weeks stop me to tell me that this is a great year. So I loved hearing what our high school students had to say about the high school, and I think that you would find that in all of our schools. We have administrators now who want to be in Southbridge Public Schools, not people who were just looking for a job, but people who chose to be here, and that makes a huge difference. Before we get into MCAS, I would just like to say that the measures that we need to continue success are we need a supportive school committee that's willing to trust our best efforts, and that's what we have to have. I think that we are operating from good intentions and we're operating from good sound practices to improve student achievement. I'd just like to ask the teachers to keep doing what you're doing to make every day successful for every child. We're doing a great job with that. I'd like to just thank our administrators who are at work early every day and who leave late every day. I really appreciate, we all appreciate what you're doing. And I guess at this point, before I turn this over to Ms. Stanton, I would really like to ask our community to be supportive of what we do. In the past few weeks, there have been negativity, there's been bullying, there's been name-calling. I've been a victim of it myself. I have bigger shoulders. But sometimes students see that, and they see that it's a world that they don't want to be in. It can actually stop students from wanting to grow up to have a job where they might be in the spotlight. You know, in questions about people's sexuality or putting that out there, I have big shoulders. Students don't always have big shoulders, and when they see that, it makes them not want to grow up and do something where they're in the spotlight, where they will make a difference. And we want all of our students to be successful and feel successful. So I'm challenging all of us to put our best feet forward. We want our students, we want to create an opportunity for our students to see success, to feel success, and meet success. And we can't do it unless we're all on the same page. And I think that we're getting there. It's not going to happen probably by the end of this year where we want to be, but we will be one step closer. I'm excited about this year. It's October, and a lot of times when it starts getting darker and cooler, today is not an example of that, it's easy to sort of fall back into old patterns. We're not doing that, and I appreciate that of everyone who is here and everyone who's involved with our schools this year. And as you take a look at our MCAS data tonight, you will see gains from last year. And I think that we want to celebrate those gains. We have put in plans for where we did not make gains, where we'd hoped to, and for gains of where we need to go. And so I will ask Ms. Stanton to come up now and start. We have a PowerPoint for you. I think she's going to run through most of it, and following the PowerPoint, you can ask questions of the principals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, you might want to get comfortable. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to the school committee for the opportunity to present to you the 2013-14 school year MCAS results. I also want to say thank you to the staff, the teachers especially, our IRSs, our academic deans who are here this evening in support, I think, of all of the hard work that has gone into these results. Thank you for sticking with it. You stick with the students, and you're sticking with the hard work that it's going to take to turn this district around. So I applaud you. Thank you very much for your hard work. Our initial analysis reveals some trends in student performance and growth. Generally, while we see improvements in both areas, we continue to address areas of concern. While we have growth in most areas, this growth, we agree, is neither enough nor are we satisfied with the pace of the growth. The following slides represent the trends we see in the data and include our next steps for each school and district-wide in our subgroup populations for special education and English language learners. I want to also, before I begin, say thank you very much to the district leadership team and especially Julie Fields for all her work in putting this presentation together for us tonight. The countless data slides that are available to us, or data sets that are available to us, and putting these together in a presentation that's meaningful to everyone, parents in the community, school committee members, teachers, was a very important task, and Julie really rose to the occasion and spent many long nights putting this together with us. So what is MCAS? Briefly, MCAS is the Massachusetts Comprehensive Assessment System. It is given in every public school in the state, and MCAS has three purposes. One, to evaluate student, school, and district proficiency and growth. Two, to inform and improve curriculum and instruction. And three, to determine eligibility for graduation. Who and what is tested? In grades 3 through 10, well 3 through 8 rather, English language arts and mathematics, and in grade 10, English, mathematics, and science, and you will notice in grade 5 and 8, science is tested as well. What are performance levels? Students that score in advanced demonstrate score ranges from 260 to 280. Proficient students demonstrate a score of 240 to 258. Needs improvement students score in the range of 220 to 238. And warning students in grades 3 through 8 and failing for high school students, those students are scoring between 200 and 218. What is growth? MCAS proficiency levels show how each student is achieving relative to state standards. For example, John is proficient in grade 6 mathematics, or does not compare John's scaled score from year to year. Student growth percentiles, SGP, indicate change in an individual student's performance over time, i.e., how much did John improve in mathematics from grade 5 to grade 6 relative to his peers who had similar scaled scores in prior years. You will not see student growth percentiles for grade 3 because that is the first year students are tested and their cohort group is determined. Why do we measure growth? We measure growth as a way to measure progress for students at all performance levels. We understand that students sometimes have difficulty making proficiency benchmarks, but as students work hard, they can demonstrate more than a year's growth and grow within their performance level, but not yet attain proficiency. So it is a way to capture that growth for students. Also, it provides evidence of improvement even among those with low achievement and gives high-achieving students in schools something to strive for beyond proficiency. The uses of growth data include reconceptualizing performance, where performance is not just a score, but it is relative to achievement and growth. It is not just enough to be proficient. We want students to be learning at their level every day. It helps identify strengths and weaknesses in student performance beyond traditional achievement data. It helps us target assistance. It helps us conduct program evaluations. And eventually, it helps us make accountability decisions. So where are we? This, before we get into the actual graph here, you will see this graph for district level performance in ELA, math, and science at grades 5 and 8 and 10 for science. But this graph, or these graphs, will represent performance data. We made the decision to try and present data in terms of meaningful information. In other words, where were we successful? Where did we have strong performance? And then improvements in performance, and where do we have concern? So instead of going through each grade level and each subject, this, I thought, with Julie's help, was a very graphic way to represent areas that we're improving in and grade levels that we're improving in as a district for ELA performance, and those 2 grade levels where we have areas of concern. This is the proficiency gap analysis that comes from the state. You can see that for the district in ELA, we have improved in most categories in all students, in high needs students, in low income students, in ELL and formal ELL students. We had no change for students with disabilities. We had improvement with our Hispanic and Latino population, and also with our Native American Pacific Islander population. So we have improved, but we continue to remain below target. So again, I think what you'll see in the trends in the data is we are making improvements, but the growth is not to the degree that we would like to, nor is the pace. In math, again, you can see some strong improvements and some areas of concern. The arrows, I should say, represent advanced and proficient % of students. I'm sure Julie's thinking, when is she going to say that? So again, this is district performance for math, and the green arrows up obviously indicate areas of improvement in our performance, and areas of red represent concern. The proficiency gaps in math, again, much like ELA for the district, we have improved but below target for all students, for our high-need students, for our low-income students. We had no change for ELL and former ELL students. We were improved but below target for students with disabilities. And we were improved but below target for our Hispanic Latino population and our multi-race population. In science, again, the 3 grades that are tested are 5, 8, and 10. We have performance improvement in grade 5 and grade 10, but a concern in grade 8. And this is a slide that does have us concerned. We are improved but below target for all students. However, we have no change for high need, no change for low income, and no change for Hispanic Latino students. And in fact, we declined in our performance, in our proficiency gap, decrease for students with disabilities and our ELL students. So as we look at the data, one of the things we do is we start to consider our student subgroup populations as a district and things that we're doing in the district to improve the performance of those students. So for students with disabilities in ELA in the district, one thing to notice is the N, which is the population growth. In 2011, there were 144 students, and in 2014, there were 168 students designated as special education students. The green line represents Southbridge and special education students. It represents their growth. The dotted gray line, I'm not sure if you can pick that up in the color up there, but that is the district student growth percentile for students, and then the state averages as well. So you can see that we're relatively flat there for special education ELL and student growth, so it's an area of concern that we will be addressing. In math, you can see we have a slight decline in 2012, but we have a steady increase in student growth over 2013 and 2014. And one of the things to point out here is that the special ed students mirror the student growth percentile pretty much of the mainstream student population. So something that we will be looking at as we move forward. So the good news, students' rate of change compared to peers show an uptick for ELA, but there's more significant improvement in math. In CPI, progress toward narrowing proficiency gaps, we have an increase in ELA, math, and science over the 2 years. What we are doing to address these issues, we have actually conducted a root cause analysis in which we look at state special education and Southbridge special education using curriculum reports and data. This can be used to direct attention of areas of curriculum that may need strengthening versus achievement and growth numbers. Professional development plan to direct instruction for all teachers, including a focus on differentiation, coaching teacher teams throughout each data cycle. Special education focus groups to develop a targeted special education improvement plan with district leadership and instructional resource specialists that will create and deliver lesson plans, monitor outcomes, and adjust instruction. And that's all part of the AIP as well. For English language learners, you'll see very similar graphs. I want to again point out the N, which is your student population. In 2011, there were 52 students designated as ELL. In 2014, there are 103. That is a significant increase in that population, which the district teachers and focus group will look at in terms of analyzing our resources and whether we've allocated appropriately. However, we do have some celebrations here for ELA. We started with a low of student growth of 22.0, and 2014, we ended up at 39. So that is a significant increase over time. And it also, as you can see, I'm not sure you can see it up there, but it does mirror the mainstream student population student growth as well. So we are staying in line in ELA when we're also closing the achievement gap with the state. That's what that represents. In math, however, we have some bumpy road there. We started out at 35.5. We took a dip in 2012 to 21, and then we are slowly climbing with a slight decline this year. But we are not in mathematics for ELL students closing the achievement gap. So district staff are looking at reasons for that. Looking at curriculum, looking at math programming at the elementary school, looking at the quality of instruction in classrooms in ELL, specifically related to math. And we will be doing that ongoing this year. So the good news, the highest performance level in 4 years in ELA for ELL students, and trends follow improvement of general student population in ELA. Our concerns include a slight decrease in math performance and increase in the gap between mainstream and ELL students. While there is growth, achievement for ELL students in both ELA and math is significantly lower than achievement for mainstream students. So while we see growth, the actual achievement of our ELL students continues to be a concern. Our next steps. For ELL, the population has doubled since 2011. We have added an ELL literacy IRS. We have focused on identification, transition, and tracking of ELL students following DESE guidelines. We've focused on coaching in classrooms using effective ELL instructional strategies and SEI strategies in mainstream classrooms. We have adopted the elementary reading program with a specific focus on ELL instruction. This program includes a strong basic foundation in phonics, a rigorous vocabulary, embedded materials for student engagement such as online videos, leveled texts, and interventions. We have also just currently adopted a pre-K curriculum, which is nationally renowned, which, as we know in research, early intervention can improve student outcomes for all of our students. We are reviewing the My Math curriculum implementation with ELL focus at the elementary school level. And we have SEI endorsement coursework going on for staff with over 50 staff currently enrolled in endorsement classwork. And we are currently in review of secondary ELL curriculum. Now, specific to schools, we have some celebrations. At Charlton Street School, our performance levels are up in all categories, in all grade levels, in all subjects. Go Charlton! So congratulations to Charlton Street School. Again, I would like to say, although we understand the performance of students is below what we would like, the growth is in the right direction, and that we are seeing improvements in all grade levels in all content areas. In closing the proficiency gap, again, Charlton Street School is above target for all student populations. This is a graph that you haven't seen yet, but what it is the student growth percentile for 2013 to 2014. And if you have the presentation in front of you and you forward to the next slide, you can actually sort of see, like, when you were a kid and you created those little pencil drawings and you flipped them and they moved, what you'll see here is very similar. So you're going to see the improvement tracked between 2013 and 2014, and you will see the movement of Charlton Street School in all grades for English language arts from the low achievement, low growth into the middle band, which is where you want to be, which is moving toward average performance and average growth. So, did you see? Isn't that cool? So that is where you want to be, and the X represents the state. So again, the trends that we're seeing are, while we have growth into the median student growth percentile, we do need to pursue increasing the performance level up. So not only going to the right into the median, but raising the performance levels for students. In math, again, Charlton Street School is above target in narrowing proficiency gaps for all student subgroup populations. And again, you will see the comparison in mathematics between 2013 and 2014. Not quite as dynamic, however, moving in performance as opposed to student growth. In science, Charlton Street School, again, in closing the proficiency gap is making improvements, and we are improved but below target for all students' populations. So the good news at Charlton Street School is that grades 3, 4, and 5 showed improvement in all areas. In ELL and math, they were improved and above target in all areas except one subgroup which improved on target. Your advanced and proficient students in ELA has shown growth from 2013 to 2014 from 31% to 39%, in math from 43% to 50%, and in science from 18% to 30%. Part of this improvement is noticed by implementation of the MyMath and our focus on results work, and our school-wide instructional focus, which is reading comprehension. The urgent news at Charlton Street School is that science and technology and ELL continue to have low achievement, and that is an area that we hope to address this year. Our action steps include implementing ELL service model and program restructure, the implementation of the new National Geographic reading series with an emphasis on nonfiction, social studies, and culture and science. Continued implementation of instructional focused best practices, which this year include checking for understanding and effective lesson planning, and a full implementation of the educator evaluation system. In addition, the district leadership team and Charlton Street School instructional leadership team, with fidelity to improving instruction through learning walks, peer observations, and sharing best practices. The addition of assistant principal allows guidance counselor to focus on social, emotional, and behavioral tiered interventions, and school-wide PBIS positive behavioral interventions and supports. Horizontal and vertical school improvement teams focus on continuous assessment, action planning, and incremental improvement. An increase in parent and community involvement and awareness of the urgency to improve student performance to provide our students with the necessary skills to compete in higher education. Before I move on, one of the things we know and one of the things that research tells us is that if we can keep students at grade level early, then they are acquiring the skills necessary to do the rigorous work as they move up into more challenging content at the upper grades. Now, West Street School has improvement in performance levels in grade 3, very significant. I do want to point that out. They have slight decreases in performance in grade 4 and 5 for ELA. They have a significant increase in student performance in grade 3, no change in grade 4 for math, and a decrease in grade 5 for math. West Street School performance in science for grade 5 has a slight increase. And with the performance, little change to the proficiency gap occurred at West Street. So you're noticing no change. One decline in students with disabilities for ELA. And for the white student population, improved but below target. This graph again represents the movement between 2013 and 2014 in terms of student growth. Let me go back. So West Street School is moving into the median student growth percentile. And we do need to focus on student performance. For math, at West Street School, we have improved but below target for all of our student subgroup populations and for all students. And again, this is the student growth percentile change between 2013 and 2014. In science and narrowing the proficiency gap, we have no change. One area of decline for Hispanic Latino students and our white students. So the good news at West Street School is that the fourth grade median growth percentiles are at 50.5 in ELA and 57 in math. The goal for student growth percentiles is anywhere between 40 and 60, so they are at the high end of that. So congratulations to grade 4. And the MyMath implementation and integrated service delivery model included focusing on math in late March, April, and May, supporting improved below target improvements. The advanced and proficient improvements in ELA in 2013 was moved from 38% to 44%, and in math moved from 31% to 35%. The urgent news for West Street School is a consideration of special education and English language learner subgroup achievement and the overall performing below state comparisons. At West Street School, the action steps include AIP implementation with data dashboards, implementing the ELL model service delivery changes, students with disabilities model service delivery changes, integrated service delivery for intervention enrichment continuing, and a focus on science and the intermediate grades and beginning evidence. For West Street School, next steps include focus on effective core instruction, mastery objectives, checking for understanding and best practices, implementation of the new National Geographic reading series with an emphasis on nonfiction, especially culture and science, implementation of the educator evaluation system and addition of the assistant principal, horizontal and vertical school improvement teams focusing on continuous assessment, action planning, and incremental improvement, committing to have to change to expect different results, speaks to school culture, and a guidance counselor focus on social, emotional, behavioral, tiered interventions for school-wide based service team, I think that is, and PBIS initiatives. And on to the middle high school. You might be tired of me yet. Nobody's laughing. I don't have any good jokes. It's just, okay. So middle high school performance levels in ELA. These include grades 6, 7, 8, and 10. So I'm going to say that again. Middle high school for ELA, the performance includes grades 6, 7, 8, and 10. We see improvements in grade 6, pretty significant. Improvements in 7, a slight decline in grade 8, and an increase for grade 10. And those are of students in the advanced and proficient categories. We see mixed results in closing the achievement gap for students. All students are improved but below target. We have no change for our high need students. Again, we are improved but below target for low income. And we have no change for ELL, former ELL, students with disabilities, our Hispanic Latino students, and we are improved but below target for our white students. This is a little bit more complicated to look. There's lots of dots up there. So this is the student growth percentiles. Remember, we're trying to get towards the median. The best place to be is in the upper right quadrant with high achievement and high student growth. So you can see the middle high school moving in that direction. And that's for English language arts. For performance in math, again, we're testing in 6, 7, 8, and 10. And we have an area of concern in mathematics. We have declines in grade 6. We have a significant increase in grade 7, and then a decline in 8, and a slight decline in 10. This is also reflected in our closing of the achievement gap. While we are improved but below target for all students, we see no change for high needs, low income, and ELL and former ELL students. Also, Hispanic students see no change. And students with disabilities are improved but below target, as are our white students. And again, for mathematics, this is the student growth percentiles between 2013 and 2014. And for science, we have a slight decrease in grade 8 and an increase in grade 10. And a concern, as I know you all share, is our science and our ability to close the achievement gap. All students, we are improved but below target. However, we have declined in our high needs, low income, ELL and former ELL, and students with disabilities subgroups. We have no change in our Hispanic Latino population, and improved but below target for our white students. So highlights for ELA include percentage of students exhibiting moderate to very high growth increased across testing levels. In grade 6, a 9% increase. In grade 7, an 8% increase. In grade 8, a 15% increase. In grade 10, an 11% increase. Our areas of urgent need in ELA include the percentage of students demonstrating low or very low growth is still too high. In grade 6, 49%. In 7, 68%. In 8th, 39%. And in 10th, 37%. In mathematics, our highlights include the percentage of students exhibiting moderate to very high growth increased across grades 6, 7, and 8, 3% in grade 6, 20% in grade 7, and 9% in grade 8. Math areas of urgent concern include percentage of students exhibiting moderate to very high growth declined in grade 10 from 49% to 36%, which is a 13% decrease. And in science, as you noticed, there is a decline in all subgroups. So next steps at the middle high school include building on the success by adding an instructional focus statement related to reading comprehension. This is aligned to our Focus on Results initiative. Teachers will receive professional development and reading strategies that include annotation, close reading, and turn and talk. The student-friendly focus, actively read, will be promoted throughout the building. We include math department head and MCAS remediation and EPP development process to ensure instructional classroom perspective. Fully implement the newly revised English language arts and mathematics curriculum maps. Develop, where applicable, and administer quarterly assessments to monitor student performance and create opportunities for reteaching and reassessment, priority standards, according to the school-wide student learning goal. And again, as in all of the schools, fully implement the educator evaluation framework with fidelity to monitor curriculum planning and instruction throughout the building. Include calibration walkthroughs with the entire administrative team, including assistant principals and academic deans. The middle high school maintain a focus on aligning goals included as part of the district AIP, the Southbridge Middle High School School Improvement Plan, and principal's entry plan through attention to monthly data dashboard. Implement required daily administrative team check-ins and weekly required administrative team meetings to monitor progress toward reaching goals. Continue to incorporate enrichment block into middle school schedule to target academic weaknesses and build upon strengths. Design and implement the middle school advisory program to educate the whole child in preparation for high school studies. And reinstate the school council, including faculty, parent, student, and community representative participation. Create a principal advisory council comprised of cross-section of student representatives that meet weekly to discuss school-wide issues and concerns with administration. And I think you heard the students speaking to some of that culture change. Thank you. We are entering a new curriculum review cycle for science, so we will be able to address some of those performance and student growth concerns that you saw. And with that, again, I want to say thank you very much to the staff who are here this evening. I know that was a little dry, but there is much to celebrate in the data, and there's much more hard work to continue as we move forward in our turnaround process, as we work with the state to align our systems with legislation and requirements so that all students are receiving a high-quality, rigorous education.
Thank you, Mrs. Stanton. Would you want to speak?
Yes, thank you. And I would just ask if the principals would come up, if you have any questions, they're more than happy to take those questions. Or Ms. Stanton or myself.
Okay. So I'll next ask the school committee, does anybody have questions for anybody? Just let me know who and what, we'll call them to the podium. Mr. Abrahamson.
Now, excuse me, these results then translate into school report cards, and I didn't see any reference to that, which indicates level, what level the school is at, and those are going to be, I assume they've been, they're going to be mailed home, or sent home.
Correct.
They must be sent home by the end of October, and that's what people are going to read and see. So actually, it might have been helpful to have a bit of that tonight too. And I wonder how, when the figures are given to the state about student population, how is that provided to the state? Who provides the information as to how many of these different categories we have?
I'm going to ask Julie if she would come up. Julie's a guru at this. It's really changed in the last couple of years. That's an interesting question of reporting. It continually reports. It used to be in a SIMS report in October, and before I say something wrong, I'll let Julie go ahead.
No, you're right on track. We report all the data to the state, and we do it through our annual state reports. We have the SIMS report, which is student information, all the demographic information. Then we also have the EPRMS report, which is the information on the teachers. And then we have an SCS report, which is information on student courses. So it involves the student, it kind of connects the two reports together. So we do provide all that to the state.
If I may?
Yes.
Excuse me. In terms of, I was just looking today, in terms of, for example, the Hispanic population reported by our district. And if I go back to 2006, 2007, it's 36.8%, and then it goes up to 37.9, 41.1, 42.4. It's going in the direction one would expect it does. But then 2010 to 11 is 47.4. 2011 to 12 is 44.1. 2012 to 13 is 40.9. And 2013 to 14 is 37.9. So our Hispanic population, according to the figures that are being given to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, is going down. And that simply seems to defy sense.
I mean, I can only say with what we have reported in the past. I mean, we do some professional development with our secretaries that do the intake and registration to make sure they're aware of, how to categorize people correctly in the system, to make sure that that's not like a reporting issue. I know we did do some professional development when I first came on board about that to make sure we were capturing the data correctly, and we continue to do that. So I would stand behind what we've done, at least while I've been here, with, give or take a few errors here and there, but I do stand behind that.
And could these affect the reporting for MCAS, I guess is what I'm saying, because that's one of the subgroups. I mean, the number or the percentage of our district and I'm using Hispanics because I just happened to look at that one and saw the jump around. But it's a subgroup in terms of reporting for student growth and whether we're meeting, our goals. So is there a problem there with truly understanding whether we're making progress or not?
Thank you. If I might, that's a very good question. I mean, it's a question that I wonder why people weren't asking for the last 5 or 6 years, and I'm not trying to throw blame anywhere else, but, I can say since Julia's been here, we have had rock-solid data that is specific, that comes to what we need, that helps us drive instruction. And I guess looking back could be anyone's guess unless you ask someone who was here. I think, and I said this before, last year when I came on board and Aaron Osborne came on board, we spent a good part of the year doing almost surveying the data to see what it said. It's very, very difficult to go back and make assumptions or come up with hypotheses on what happened or what didn't happen. I think that what we have now going forward is we have a fantastic data person and we have good curriculum people. We have someone in the ELL position who's already made a huge improvement in it. So, I think that we look back and say, why wasn't this asked earlier? I mean, we can ask, but I don't know that we'll get an answer for it. It's hard to look back and know how many students were really Hispanic or how many should have been, or, we could play the woulda, shoulda game all night. And unfortunately, that's the answer.
I won't belabor this, but if we're talking just 2012-13, 2013-2014, we have 40.9%, 37.9%. So our Hispanic population dropped, according to the figures we presented to the state, by 3% in the district.
Can I just ask what numbers are you looking at? Are you looking at where the MCAS testing takes place? I don't know what numbers you're looking at.
I'm looking at when you go on to the school district profiles.
Okay, yep, on the enrollment.
Correct.
Okay, because I would just wanted to clarify, sometimes with the MCAS data and the number of students that are reported are only those tested, and since we don't test all students,
No, I'm not looking at that. I'm looking at the percentage of that population reported for our district, not for the testing, but for our district. Sure. And according to that, it's reduced by Hispanic population and others. I'm sure that there are others that might not quite fit what we think. And so I just question, and I wonder if that has an effect on our testing results, and if it has an effect on maybe possible grants and things that we can get based on our populations. And so I think it's very important to have that correct. I don't have the answer, and I'll drop it at that, but I think it's worth considering.
Just if I may tag on that, because I think I get what you're saying. My question was, so if a student presents and a student is an English language learner, plus their SPED, plus their Islander Pacific, how are they categorized? What category do they fall into?
That's where the state developed the high needs category. The high needs category, I believe, I don't know the exact definition, but it involves a student in multiple categories and more than one. So most of our students fall in the low income. So our high needs group according to the state subgroup, really involves almost all of our students, that because they're at least in one category, then if they fall in another category, that's where the high needs group comes from.
Okay, thank you. And did I hear correctly that the school secretaries are making this decision?
Oh, no. The school secretaries enter the information that when they register a student, and that information is put on the registration, the parents do self-disclose. We don't have anything that says, we don't validate that anywhere. We do take their information. They're required to provide a birth certificate with the information, and that's what information we use to put into our SIS, we call it.
Thank you. Was there a question on the site? Dr. Page?
Yeah, I have a couple of technical questions just so I better understand some of these things. So how is it that the student growth is defined in terms of the percentile, and what exactly does that percentile mean, and how is the target established as to what that target should be?
Okay, I'll try. Student growth, could you repeat your first question?
Yeah, so how is the student growth defined? I mean, there's a lot of these charts that basically show the student growth. I mean,
Right,
that's what's reported on these main pages coming straight from the state, right? And so you've got
Correct,
these
yes.
all students and all the different categories, and then there's a little red dot that shows, I'm assuming
Right.
that's the target?
Well, yes, that actually refers to, maybe I could, well, I don't want to pull it up. I'll try to remember what's on there. On the school profile, or the accountability data, those are our targets set by the state based on, rather than growth, it's a combination of our performance level targets. Basically, it's a CPI target, and it gets a little complicated to explain the formulas they use, but they give us a target, and basically our target for the 2014 target, does it say, was based on our CPI, which is a combination of our performance levels and the student growth. We're basically, by the year 2017, supposed to cut our proficiency gap in half. So each year, they give us a target to make based on our past.
So it's an annual target that's there?
It is an annual moving target.
Okay, and so what's the ultimate goal? 100?
Well, yes, I mean, ultimately, that was the goal for the No Child Left Behind.
Yep.
So when that came and when that time frame passed, they made this the new target for districts that were still struggling.
Okay, so it's basically they're coming up with some kind of equation so they can enable you to determine a mechanism or a target for making incremental year-to-year performance increases.
Yes, so that's where our targets come from. But to talk about the growth, they give us a median of 51. That's where they would like to see all students at. But normal growth, they won't say average, they'll say normal growth for a student should be in that range between 40 and 60. And you'd like to see an increase in each year, even in a student that's performing advanced. It gives them a chance, you want them to see a higher growth, so they're still learning. The performance level isn't going to change, but you as a district can still measure your teaching.
Right. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. Okay. And there was one point, Cheryl, you mentioned that when you did the certain one of these analyses, let me see if I can find it, which I think is actually a much better way to look at the data than a lot of what the state reports. Is the student growth where you're comparing individual cohorts of students as to their history of performance, and you're actually able to track how they're really improving, because it gets very difficult when you're grouping this year's fourth grade comparing to last year's fourth grade. And I'm not sure there's a whole lot of value. I mean, I'm just asking a question, but I don't perceive a whole lot of value in those comparisons, because you see there's anomalous things that don't make sense in a lot of that. So my question is, when you were talking about that, you talked about scaled scores, like comparing their scaled scores from year to year. And so I would like some clarification on what that means by scaling them.
Well, I can help clarify.
Yeah.
Just the scaled score is a score the state gives us. They take the range. I don't know the formula for that, but when we get the raw data, they give us the actual scaled score, and that's what gets sent home to parents. They get the bar and they get the scaled score there, but it also tells them where they fall in the proficiency level categories.
Okay, so the scaling then is probably according to whatever the averages were for the state at that year? In order to
I would want to
Okay.
clarify before I answer, but I
That
would.
would kind of make sense. I was just curious to see
Yeah.
how that was, you know, if there's some kind of
Sure.
scaling factor or some kind of adjustment that's added to it. All right. I have some other questions, if that's okay.
Sure, please, yeah.
Sure. Just a matter of clarification on some things. There's a lot of acronyms and stuff that get thrown out there, and I really don't know. I'm getting better, but I don't know what all of them are. And so, and some of it has to do with vernacular or abbreviations, but like you said, something about implementing SEI strategies. What's SEI mean?
SEI, or Sheltered English Immersion
Okay.
Strategies.
All right, got it. I should have known that. All right. Okay, and so and a follow-up is one of the things that was mentioned as being one of the reasons why Charlton Street seemed to have had some really good gains was the implementation of the My Math program. Was that differentially implemented at Charlton Street versus West Street, or do you have some other maybe insight as to why there's that difference between those two?
And that's our work, actually. So the work is, it was implemented the same, and so the question is, why is there a difference in achievement? Same program, same implementation, and one of the things we're looking at this year in particular are tiered intervention supports and strategies for students who aren't making the gains, and whether there's a difference in how the schools are organizing those and scheduling students into support groups, and whether that's a difference. But that really is the work of this year, is to look at individual students, groups of students, and to determine what instructional strategies might have been applied that made the improvements, and that's the work.
Thank you. Anybody over here? Mrs. Donovan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Ms. Stanton, I have one more follow-up question. I was saying to Mrs. Quinney, Dr. Page stole my question. That's okay. I just wanted to take the target idea just one step further. When the state sets a target number, is it an aggregate target, or how does the target for the district or for an ELA, grade 3 ELA target, how does that differ from an individual student target? Do they also have individual student targets, so that if you have a student who does in fact score advanced, have they in fact reached a target?
I don't know of any individual targets, but again, that's where that growth comes in. You want to keep a student that's at a higher performance level in that median growth range to know that they are still making improvements. The targets really, my understanding, is for the district to stay on track and for accountability reasons.
Okay.
It doesn't really get down to the student level. That's where our job is really, to make sure that our students are learning and are growing. They're not only performing, but they're growing. So that's where we come in.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just trying to remember, I don't recall looking at my own children's test scores that came home. Do the test scores themselves show individual student growth?
Yes, and you should have a little, I think we're calling my own children, I think they give you a little bubble as to where your student is versus the school and the district.
Yeah, okay, so that's what that whole piece
Yes,
is. Okay.
yeah.
The other question that I had was a lot of the next steps for some of these schools is horizontal and vertical school improvement teams, and I'm not sure of the definition of horizontal and vertical school improvement teams, so if you could just expand upon that.
So horizontal teams are typically at grade level. So you would have your grade 3 teachers working together, analyzing data, talking about best practice, specific to student improvement, regrouping students, reteaching groups of students. So looking at curriculum at the grade level, horizontally. Vertically refers to aligning curriculum K through 12. A little more tricky. When you start looking at the transition grades between 5 and 6 and 8 and 9. But those vertical teams looking at alignment of curriculum to make sure that standards are being addressed at appropriate grade levels, not retaught or taught again, repeated, and looking at particular standards that students are not performing well in, and whether or not it's a vertical articulation of curriculum issue, whether we're teaching it, whether it's in the curriculum in the right place, whether it's in the scope and sequence correctly.
Okay.
So getting teachers together to talk to each other about what vertical alignment, effective vertical alignment looks like.
Okay, I knew that, I guess, I just didn't know that's what you called it. Okay, thank you for that clarification. And then my last question was, you had mentioned the adoption of a new pre-K curriculum. That was the first time I personally had ever heard of that, so I didn't know what did we do and versus what are we doing now relative to our pre-K students.
So it's my understanding that prior to us researching pre-K curriculum, we basically were doing, like most pre-K programs, a sort of a homegrown approach, getting students, very young students, used to coming to school, doing some basic literacy and numeracy, and we have since adopted the OWL curriculum, Opening the World of Literacy. Yay, I got it right. And it is very much focused on content vocabulary, rich content vocabulary, exposure to rigorous vocabulary, mastering high-frequency words and usage, but really exposure. Lots of mini circles, mini group instructions around content, so introducing science concepts at a very young age in circles, literacy concepts at a young age in circles, and we recognize that our pre-K program is a half day for many of our students, so that will be a challenge for us to address all of the circles, if you will, for students and keep it fun. But we're looking forward to the professional development that's going to go along with that program and looking for the improvement in results with students, our youngest students.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. Thank you. I'm all set, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Stanton.
Mrs. Conger?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I have many questions, so I apologize. I'll try to go as quick as I can. And I don't know who can answer them, so I'll just ask the question and then we can direct it to whoever. I will start at the elementary level. Just to kind of piggyback on what my fellow school committee members said, I know that we're trying at Charlton Street School and West Street School to kind of mirror each school. From a curriculum standpoint and teacher standpoint, do we have the same amount of, let's say, ELL teachers at each school that are working with the curriculum there?
We do not have the same number, no.
How about why?
That predates me. It was a historical question. Anybody know why?
Yeah.
So per pupil ratio, I mean, that's what I would have guessed.
Will they still be getting the same support for each school at Charlton Street and West Street? Will West Street be getting the same ELL teacher support that Charlton Street does to help improve those ELL scores?
Yes. Oh, in terms of the IRS, yes.
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 Okay, so they do. And how about their curriculum in regards to helping improve these scores in regards to like science and?
So that's our next step, particularly with science and ELL. The curriculum committees have met for math and ELA, so you're seeing the adoption of My Math last year and National Geographic this year. And so this curriculum cycle reviews are coming on board. It's part of our AIP for science, so you should be looking in the future to adoption. National Geographic does have a science foundation, so we're excited about that. And ELL, we'll be looking at that now that the ELL sort of intake and transition has been addressed and the systems are aligned with appropriate DESE regulations. Now we can move forward into the curriculum and the instruction particular to ELL students.
I know that we implemented the new My Math program last year. How did that seem to work in regards to MCAS? Do we know those numbers, if this program's beneficial, or in the past was the other program more beneficial? I think what I've heard is that we never have enough time to kind of evaluate one program before we purchase the next one, which is a problem.
It's a great question. It doesn't happen just here. It happens in public education often. One of the things we're doing to address that very question is the use of our IRSs and our academic deans. So we are meeting once a week, and those are the very questions that we ask. So I know my IRSs are here today, and they can vouch for those are the types of questions that we are asking on a regular basis, looking at data and trying to determine the effectiveness of programs as we are purchasing and implementing them.
Thank you. And I know that we spend a lot of money on the ANET program where the kids take that ANET test 4 times a year. Are we feeling that ANET has helped us? Because I feel personally that these kids are over-tested when they take the MCAS 4 times, then they have to, the ANET 4 times, then they have to take the MCAS. How are the ANET results are they mirroring what our MCAS results are?
It's not the intent of ANET to mirror MCAS results. That's not what ANET is used for. But again, ANET is a topic of discussion at our IRS meetings. It's also a topic of discussion at grade level meetings to address student performance in standards as they are taught throughout the school year.
So what is the purpose of ANET then for our school district?
Basically, to understand how students are progressing through the scope and sequence and whether they're mastering standards and not waiting until a summative assessment like MCAS, so that teachers are getting information on standards that are being addressed.
Okay. My other question was, do we look at when the students are put in the warning and failing, are we looking at attendance rates? Are these children actually taking the test, or what if someone didn't take the test? Does that get grouped into the warning and failing?
That is part of the school report card attendance.
And how, I should rephrase the question. When the student gets a warning and failing, are they having attendance problems?
It's certainly a category that we look at. Mm-hmm. It's not a given that a student may have poor attendance and therefore do poorly on MCAS. There are students who have poor attendance based on a medical issue and they're provided with tutoring and some accommodation and they do fine. It's not an easy cause and effect relationship to make, although attendance is a significant concern. And I don't know if you want to speak to what you're doing with attendance this year at the high school level?
So a failure to take the test, though, wouldn't be in the warning and failing category. It would be part of the early warning indicator system, the EWIS. So that's part of the data we'd get that we can begin to react to. And I know the assistant principals are now using the early warning indicator system to complete some data dashboards so we know where we can target the intervention. This year, we've assigned an assistant principal to track tardies and absences, down to making home visits should the need arise, making phone calls home. I think we talked about that at one of our earlier meetings, making phone calls home after between 3 and 5 absences. So we are trying to target that. But right, failure to take the test or an absentee on the day of a test isn't a failure on the test.
Thank you. Another question in regards to the middle school, high school. What reading program do we have at the middle school, high school right now?
It's not a specific reading program. We're reading novels and texts.
So how are we doing, what are we doing in regards to that to improve the ELA scores?
We are fully implementing the new ELA curriculum, which is a very detailed curriculum map. It's a scope and sequence along with the resources that are applicable to teach each standard, and that is being implemented at this point, and that's a 6 to 12 map.
Great. Mm-hmm. And then in regards to ELL at the middle school, high school, how are we doing in regards to staffing there?
We do have one ELL instructor at the middle and one at the high school, so we are staffed there.
Okay. I know last year, the only reason I questioned that is last year, I know that was a problem when we sat through budget and we were trying to improve that so we could improve our ELL
We also
scores.
receive a share of the new director's resources and time.
Perfect. Oh, great. And my last question will be, how are we making parents aware of their children's MCAS scores, and what are we putting in place to kind of work with the parents to help improve their kids' test scores? I know last year through summer school, we did the MCAS program, if I'm correct, but I know that was poorly attended, so I wanted to know what systems are being put in place through all the levels to help get the parents on board with the children to help them improve their scores.
Are you coming up? I can do it.
So at the middle school, high school level, we're using our 625, 632 grant for student improvement in MCAS. We are designing and implementing tutorials for students. We have some mixed results in terms of student attendance, so we're going to go back to the drawing board, I think, and look at ways to make that program to improve attendance at that program. At the elementary school, can any of the principals talk to specific MCAS improvement?
Well, I can just say, with all the parents at West Street, we're willing to sit down with you and go through your child's score to talk about things you can do at home, things you do with your teacher, but there's not a program per se. But that's out there. I don't know, one call home, I offer that. No parents have taken that up yet, but I'm hoping people do, so we can sit down and talk about where your child is and where they can go. So.
Can I jump in?
One of the things that's in the planning stages right now is a goal setting, sort of a goal bowl at the elementary school level, so that we can sit down with the students, go over what their scores are, what it would be to get to the next level. And out of that usually comes a letter writing home campaign to the parents about what their goals are. And then we try to encourage the parents to get on board with it that way as well. So it's a pretty big initiative, but it's worked out really well when I've done it in the past.
Sorry, Mrs. Quinney, I think, had a follow-up on that.
Not a question, but I know that last year, students that performed poorly on like the math section of the ANET were then targeted as a group of kids that then were offered before school MCAS, kind of making sure that they had those standards covered prior to taking the MCAS. So they were identified early through ANET as being deficient in need of extra support, and then were offered that, parents were offered that in the mornings. I don't know if that will continue in the future.
That will continue. The other thing regarding, go ahead.
So at the middle high school, with a lot of cooperation from the teachers at the middle school and our academic deans, we have continued the E-block, the enrichment block, and the students are grouped according to strengths and weaknesses, and that's through 6, 7, and 8. So that's a target system. We did make, members of the administrative team made personal phone calls to parents of students who still need to take the MCAS because they did not perform sufficiently. First time around, inviting them to participate in the tutorial that Ms. Stanton just described, and we also are at work on the EPPs at the high school level.
Thank you.
Are you all set? Mrs. Quinney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure who to direct this to, but given the differences in meeting targets and exceeding targets between Charlton Street and West Street School, I understand that we have horizontal team meetings within a building. Has there been any discussion regarding IRS meetings or grade level meetings between two schools in order to capture best practices or what seems to be working versus one building and the other?
Certainly, the IRS meetings that occur on Wednesdays, weekly, that is the topic of discussion. So the strengths of both of the schools are discussed, and then policies, I guess, and procedures and protocols that are used that are effective are shared with the intended goal of sort of unifying the approach.
Ms. Gardner?
And if I might, one of the things that we did, even in our hiring committees back in April of last school year, we wanted to make both of our elementary schools somewhat equal in what students were offered and what parents felt like students were achieving. And I believe a few years ago that the elementary schools were changed in the format, and I think that some of it is that we're catching up from the change in that format. And again, I wasn't here, most of us weren't here, but I've spoken with teachers who were here and have sort of gone through that change. And I can say that hiring Mr. Reagan and Mr. Latoy from the very beginning in July and August, they were sitting at the same table looking to do things the same way so that students got equal opportunity. And even as they send out parent notes and parent letters, they do it on the same day, and I think that they deserve a great amount of credit for that. So I'm hoping to see that the achievement gap between the two schools does start closing. And I also think that as we have our IRSs meet with each other and talk with each other, and I think the meeting that Cheryl is holding every week is huge, because we have a great amount of superior teaching and ideas in many teachers, but certainly at our IRS and dean level So I think in sharing those ideas, we're going to see huge gains in the next couple of years. You know, we're still probably not going to be there this year, and that sounds disappointing, and it's not a negative. It's just that we're working towards that goal of really seeing the uniformity across our district.
I can also add a couple more things, Ms. Quinny. So our ILT team is also being coached by the Focus on Results folks in a common way. And also we've talked about our horizontal teams grade level going across schools from time to time, like a once a month kind of thing. They meet weekly. We haven't done it yet, but we plan on having cross school grade level teams.
Thank you. I also wanted to kind of touch on what Dr. Page had said regarding like tracking cohorts, because I think it would be more advantageous for us to see those results, kids that started in third and then how they've either improved or regressed, and then be able to capture if there's particular curriculum in place or transition times that make that MCAS meeting our targets that are impacting those, to be able to follow those kids, I think would be helpful information. Clearly not for tonight, but sometime in the future. And I also wanted to clarify, we have certain targets, so those little red dots are targets for this year, are going to move for next year. So we have schools that have met a target, but that target's going to move, and we have other schools and groups of students that are already below. So the expectation is they are going to make not only the target that was in place this year, but then exceed that to reach a new target. I think we think there's a target and it's one set place and it's going to stay there. But I think the public needs to know, maybe we've met this target, but those kids that are already starting behind the target, the expectation is they are going to surpass the target of this year and meet that target. So that's constantly moving forward, and I think that that's a challenge, but I think it's a good challenge because I don't think we're anywhere close to where we could be or where we should be, but I think we're moving in the right direction. So I wanted to say thank you for everyone for your hard work, and also just to make the public aware that we might have met the target for this year, but that target is moving again next year in some instances. So that is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Mr. Lieber?
I have one question, because a lot of the questions were already answered by, or asked by fellow school committee members. My concern was the disconnect from elementary to middle high school in the math. I know that my math was implemented at the elementary levels. What was the disconnect from there to the middle high school? Because across the board, minus 7th grade, there was a decrease. So what is the new curriculum? Because it was mentioned in here that there is a new curriculum, and where is that going to put us moving forward, I guess? I just would like to know where the disconnect was.
What you're seeing is a trend that is not unique to Southbridge. The trend in mathematics is to see a decline in 6th and 7th grade, 7th grade in particular, as students move from the numeracy standards and into some of the more higher order thinking math that is required at that level. The curriculum maps were revised and implemented, and often when you do an implementation of new curriculum, you will see also, research will tell you, an implementation dip, and so that's something that we need to look at as well. Another thing that we're going to be looking at is staffing, because there was some volatile staffing that occurred at the middle high school in the math department, so those are all things that we need to consider. In addition, we need to consider the math IRS position at the middle high school as vacant right now, and something that we need to consider as we move forward and start to organize ourselves around student achievement in math.
So you mentioned staffing. Was that a lack in staffing?
Changes in staffing, turnover in staffing. Mm-hmm.
I'm done.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple of follow-ups. Last time we talked about this, I asked, I can't remember now, so my basic question is, I would assume that the MCAS tests are structured such that specific questions map back to specific standards within a discipline.
Correct.
So my question is, what steps are being taken to identify within ELA, within math, within science and technology, as to specific target areas according to the standards that we have maybe higher deficiencies in, or maybe we have some areas where we're strong, and so forth?
Sure. So one of the things that now that the results are public, we do item analysis, and there are graphs that we can use to look at how students perform on standards, and we can assess which standards students are underperforming in, what content areas those are, what skills previously students need to have to bring to the table in order to answer some of those questions. And the item analysis occurs at department meetings so that we can look at, again, is the curriculum aligned appropriately? In other words, are we teaching what we need to be teaching in order for students to be mastering standards? So there's data that we look at in terms of item analysis, and we can also look at question analysis, how students are answering questions that they're performing poorly in. So are there close confusers in questions that students are not able to distinguish between, is a big one. One of the things you notice in this district, and it's not uncommon in districts that have low achievement and low student performance, is the lack of attempt at open response in math. The amount of zeros that you will see in a student roster for MCAS is disheartening, that students are not attempting even to do an open response or a short answer in mathematics. They're skipping them. And that's something that needs to be addressed throughout the district, getting students to write about math at very young ages so they're comfortable with that, being able to express in language their mathematical understanding and reasoning, such that when they do encounter grade 6, 7, and 8 level math open response, they're able, or at least willing to attempt.
So as a follow-up to that, I think it would be a good idea if we all agree that we ask for some kind of follow-up report on a more detailed analysis of the data, so it gives us a little bit of a better feel for where the issues are, because that might impact our decisions in terms of resource allocation and so forth. So that would be, a request that I would like to make.
If I can add one follow-up. I also think that following 6th grade, we start to lose parents. Elementary parents tend to be much more involved in their students' lives, in their students' work, in their students' homework. And 6th grade, even though it's moved to the middle high school now, parents still seem a little more involved. I know Ms. Earls had open house for them, and it was very well attended. So I think that's another place that we really need to make that outreach to parents and to families of, yes, your child is truly in the middle high school now in 7th grade, but I think we need more home follow-through. I'm not blaming parents. I'm not blaming it at all. We have our own things to do to improve student achievement, but I do think that we can't ignore that, and I think that it's across the United States, middle schools aren't faring as well as we think they should be, but I think that that's the area where we need more parent involvement that we lose after 6th grade.
Is there anything else? If I may, it always strikes me when I look at the grade 10 MCAS scores that we seem to do okay when it really counts, So when kids, I think, know that it's required for graduation. So I don't think it's that we can't do it, there's a reason we're not doing it. And I do hear from students that a large number of students don't even attempt the open response. And even if you can get them to attempt, that might make a big difference in a point in the test. Something maybe to think about. I share everybody's concern that we're like comparing apples to oranges in a sense. I know that every other district is faced with the same thing, so that's, but it would be nice to compare cohorts moving along to see, for example, has it made a difference the fact that we reconfigured the schools? Part of the reason the schools were reconfigured was to provide some of that horizontal, vertical alignment that you're talking about. So it would be interesting to see if that's made a difference for those students there. I'm very concerned about math and science. Extremely concerned about it. I think at this point it demands an all-hands-on-deck approach, and that may be something for us to consider as we look for grant funding or come up with programs or even make it fun for kids. There's a lot of resources out there that might make it an after-school program something that the kids would want to do rather than they'd be required to do, so that maybe that's something to think about. And part of the issue with the MCAS report cards, to me, they're very difficult to read. And we're sending them home to families, and I know that people sometimes can't make heads or tails of them. So it might be worthwhile to have a breakdown of what I wish I thought of it before. What does the report look like? And what does it mean? I think that would be helpful. And most of my other questions were asked by my fellow school committee members, so I guess I really don't have much of a question. Oh, Mr. Abrahamson?
The school report card, district and individual school report cards are well, there are two types. There's one that's an overview, and it's very easy to understand. And people are going to get that.
Yeah.
And they're going to see what level we're on. And they're going to see that we're a district, we're level 4 still. And they're going to wonder, when are we going to get out of that level? That's why I'm concerned about the report cards, and that's the analysis is fine for all of us. But what's going to go home is going to be very clear to people, and it's going to tell you what kind of, it says what kind of school it is, it's the lowest 20%, it's a level 3, we're a level 4 district. We want to see, obviously, progress there, so that we get out of level 4, which we've been in an underperforming district for 10 years. And there aren't too many districts like that in the state. In fact, there's only one other one. So we need to finally get a definition from people how we're going to get out of this.
Thank you. If there's anything else, are we set? Okay, the time is 8:55, but we do have principal entry plans to discuss, so I don't know if folks want to recess briefly or you just want to go into it. Maybe we take a recess after entry plans so you could leave. I'm not sure what works for you. I'd like to pull the principals to ask. Would you like to do it now or recess for a few minutes?
Do it now.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Stanton. Thank you, Julie. And thank all the staff that came in to support the principals this evening. Thank you very much. Okay, so for presentations, this is agenda item 9C, principal entry plans for the 2014-2015 school year. I don't know if Ms. Gardner would just like to speak to what a principal entry plan is and why they're done this year, because prior to this year, we haven't ever seen them. So.
Great. Thank you. Well, as part of the program that I'm in as a new superintendent, I was asked to do an entry plan that helps new superintendents become familiar with the district they're in, with the data, with people, with who's important, with who the stakeholders are, with who their teachers are. And so in looking at where we were with 4 new principals, we thought that it would be an excellent idea for them to do an entry plan as well. And so the entry plan, again, gives you a look at the people who we have hired and to see what their goals are, almost their personal goals, their personal philosophies, and their expectations for themselves and for the work that they do. And it's a way that you can get to know people a little bit better when you don't have time to sit down for an hour or two and really get to know them. And so when I took a look at their plans, they're exceptional. All of them have a lens toward the accelerated improvement plan, and they have a lens to their own school, and they were very careful and thoughtful about who they wanted to talk to and what they thought the end result of these plans were going to be, and all of them point to increased student success. And they were interesting to read. I'm sure you found them interesting, but I think for this group of principals that we have, I continue to marvel at their professionalism, at their amount of time that they work, that they're actually at work, and their personal philosophies. I think, we throw around things like moral compass a lot these days, but I feel like the people that we have working in the administrative level now and beyond, but certainly on the administrative level now, have a real moral compass of how we want to complete this work. And I think that we're really beginning to gel as a bigger team. And so I just want to thank them for the work that they did on these and for the fact that they believe in them. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to start with Ms. Earls. I'm just going to go in order that's listed here.
I'm not sure, you want us to present something, or do you want to ask questions? How would you like to do it at this point?
Maybe if you can give us a brief kind of
Sure.
a condensed version, and then we'll ask some questions.
Why don't I go with the overarching goals and the general goals, if that works with you?
Okay.
Sure. So the overarching goal of my entry plan is to create a culture of achievement at the middle high school, supported by high-quality staff, operating within clearly defined protocol and adequate systems. And I have 4 general goals, and they are aligned to the goals that are expected of all administrators in the evaluation system. So the first standard that we meet is a standard of instructional leadership, and my goal in that area is to oversee aligned implementation of the educator evaluation system at Southbridge Middle High School, while serving as the primary evaluator for new or new to SMHS faculty and faculty members on an improvement plan if there are any. The management and operations standard, I would like to analyze and respond to deficiencies within the current systems for ensuring all students have opportunities to earn sufficient academic credits and pass any assessments required to receive a diploma. Family and community engagement, I intend to create multiple opportunities to solicit stakeholder input and to communicate any school-related news or information. And my professional culture goal is to develop and implement a school improvement plan aligned to the district accelerated improvement plan to create a shared vision focused on student success.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions of Ms. Earls? Mrs. Donovan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Ms. Earls. My only question is relative to the educator evaluation process. When does that start, or is that an ongoing thing, or have you begun any of that yet?
Yes, it has started.
Okay.
What we did this year for my staff is to create a shared document on the OneDrive, or the system that we use, so that we can track our progress toward meeting all of the deadlines and benchmarks.
Okay.
And the evaluation system is divided between myself and my assistant principals, so we're all assigned certain educators to whom we serve as the primary evaluator.
Okay.
And yes, that has begun. Goal setting has begun. It's nearly complete. And we're
Great.
on to our first set of observations.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm all set, Madam Chair.
Easy up, Dr. Page.
One quick question is, actually, this just occurred to me. So you're the principal of 6th grades, right? And
Yeah.
right? And you have Charlton Street and West Street that are principals of 6th grades. It seems to me you have about twice the amount of evaluative work, maybe even more than the rest of them. And so I'm a little bit concerned. Are you going to be spending all your time evaluating, and how much are you going to be able to spend principaling?
I would say that evaluations and those responsibilities probably account for 50% or more of our time. I do have the 3 assistant principals who are working with me. It's a caseload, but the way we've mapped it out, I feel confident that by mid-May, the deadlines will be able to accomplish it. How much time of my day that will take, it is significant.
Thank you.
Madam Chair? Just quickly, through you to my colleague, Dr. Page. I am math challenged sometimes, but I believe 6th grade through 12th grade is 7 grades.
Oh, yeah, well, all right.
Just add to my caseload. Thank you.
Anything else for Ms. Earls? Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have Mr. Latoy from Charlton Street School. Welcome.
Thank you. Again, I'll just provide a brief synopsis. I will develop the tools and technical assistance needed to implement the district AIP and continue the momentum of the staff to drive Charlton Street School to become high-performing with high expectations and high student achievement for all. Through collaboration with staff, we'll develop a strategic and systematic process for sustained school improvement, empowering instructional leadership teams, assuring coherence in all elements, building and sustaining a collaborative learning culture, and shared decision-making structure in the schools. We'll use data in order to enrich classroom instruction, increase the effectiveness of student improvement plans, and creating an ethical culture of high achievement. I plan to work with the principals of Eastwood Road and West Street to build a culture of collaboration between all 3 elementary schools while building community relations. And a few of the steps are that I met and talked with the staff to identify strengths and weaknesses, host a meet and greet with parents and caregivers and community members, be visible and available to staff, students, and parents, make it a regular practice to be in classrooms assisting, being part of the teaching and learning, be present during drop-off and pickup times and assist with maintaining the safety of all students, work with instructional resource specialists to assist teachers in collecting and using data, effectively enrich classroom instruction, familiarize myself and the staff with the district AIP, effectively implement the teacher evaluation process, and collaborate with the district leadership team to promote a consistency in instructional leadership.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions for Mr. Latoy? Oh, you got off easy.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Next, Mr. Vinnie Regan, West Street School Principal. Welcome.
Hi, thanks. So I guess I'll just read mine because it's hard to bullet point out. But I've been principal at the West Street School since July 1st, 2014. This entry plan encompasses my vision for a highly effective elementary school and the requisite steps and systems to ensure West Street School is reaching its best potential in teaching, learning, and healthy child development. I believe in professional learning communities and prefer to call our horizontal and vertical collaborative teams, or collaborative structures, collaboration teams. The development and utilization of collaboration teams is primary in our school improvement efforts and will be a major coaching focus for both the administration and our IRSs. Our curriculum focus for this year includes the adoption of the National Geographic Reach for Reading series for all students and our second year implementation of the My Math program. We have a lot of work to do in social studies and science as well, but the focus has been there and it's something we're going to expand on. There's been a lot of work in the last few years on curriculum development and trying to get our curriculums in with fidelity, assessing progress, and providing enrichment intervention based on student performance. We're doing that daily with our integrated service model, and we'll expand from just an ELA focus or mainly ELA focus to more work with math and specifically students that are ELL in math, and I have a teacher doing that right now. We've expanded our horizontal teams to include an English language learner and a special education team, which is new, and we recognize the achievement gap that exists with those students and need to seek to improve this gap through a collective sense of urgency, teamwork, and service delivery with fidelity. We're in the process of updating our school improvement plan to ensure alignment with the accelerated improvement plan and reconcile that with the plan that was developed last year. We're going to work closely with Charlton Street to ensure elementary programs are similar, and work closely with Eastford Road and this Southbridge Middle School to ensure positive transitions. So yeah, I have a vision that I've worked with the staff on, themselves aligned to. I don't think it's a lot of jargon in there, so I don't know if you want me to read it, but that's my last piece of it.
Thank you. You could rival Mrs. Congdon for reading our policies. We should have you read our policies now. Does anybody have questions for Mr. Regan? Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And hello and welcome to Mary Skripczak. She's the principal of Eastford Road School. Welcome.
Thank you. So I'll just go to the latter part of mine, plans to move forward. To move forward, including the implementation of the teacher evaluation system with an emphasis on common goals. I've spent a lot of time in staff and grade level meetings trying to have common goals, and again, with our focus on results work, having best practices for all teachers. Writing the school improvement plan and implementing it with fidelity. Monitoring initial assessment of students and overseeing tiered intervention support systems. Collaboratively establishing best practices in teaching with focus on results, professional development, and with the instructional leadership team. Increasing community involvement through parent trainings, family nights, and continuing to improve the positive culture and climate within the Eastford Road School community.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions of Ms. Skripczak? I just have one. Are you the only evaluator at Eastford Road School?
Yes.
And how many staff do you have to evaluate during the year?
22-ish.
Okay. Thank you. Are you all set?
I am. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Quinn.
No, it's not a question.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to, no question.
No question, I'm sorry.
That in reading all of these, they are so tremendously different and individual, I think, and reflective of each principal's personal style, but at the same time, so unified in the goal of increasing student performance and ensuring that every student be successful in doing what needs to be done in order to move that forward, as well as one of the school committee members had previously said, how are we going to get out of our level 4 status? And I think it is a unified vision around school improvement plans that are tied to our AIP and moving our AIP forward in order to get us out of that level 4 situation that we've been in for much too long. And I think that it was nice to see how personalized and individual they were, but at the same time so focused on AIPs, school improvement plans, and helping our students achieve all that they are capable of. So I just wanted to tell that to the community who didn't get to read them all. Thank you.
Thank you. Folks, the time is like 10 after 9. Do people want to break for 10 minutes? If that's okay, we'll break and come back at 9:20 to resume the meeting. Thank you. The school committee is back from its recess. Note that it is 9:22 p.m. and please note for the record that all school committee members are present. We left off at agenda item number 10, which is report of the finance director. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Osborne.
I do not have a specific separate report tonight. However, there are 2 agenda items that I will be addressing a little later in the agenda. I understand.
Yes, through you, and I've already said I'm going to ask him this. I asked for an update about the computer room, the ones that didn't have the connections, and so how's it going?
We have confirmed today that it is done. The electrician has been in. He has wired the room. The computers are up and running, to my knowledge. So we are 100% ready to go.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much for that. Agenda item number 11 is report of the superintendent. Ms. Gardner.
Thank you, and I'll be brief tonight since we've spent a lot of time on MCAS. First, I would just like to congratulate Principal Vinnie Regan and his wife Allie on the birth of his son last week. James Howard Reagan was born, I believe, was it Thursday? Thursday.
Congratulations.
And he was a whopping 8 pounds and 1 ounce, I believe. Okay, so I'm very wrong there, even bigger, 9 pounds, 7 ounces. He took his time getting here, but we're glad that everyone is well, and we have a new member of our extended family, so congratulations, Vinny. Secondly, today we spent the morning with Dr. Sally Dias from the DESE, and we looked at root causes of our SPED and ELL issues that have sort of hindered the district for many years. And for that, we had our IRSs and our deans, and several, especially of our elementary IRSs, are longtime Southbridge teachers, again, who are teachers who have been incredibly devoted to the system, and I think that we got a lot of great data on how we're moving forward with that. My final thought is, yes, tomorrow we are hosting the, I'm trying to remember his title, but the Associate Commissioner of Education, Russell Johnston. He will arrive tomorrow at 11:30. Ms. Earls and I will take he and Senator Moore and David Roach on a tour of the high school. Often people wonder why when we have visitors they want to see the high school. Much of the success of our accelerated improvement plan is in how many students we graduate. And I know from having been in a level 4 district that moved to level 3, some of the things that influence moving out of level 4 are lowering your dropout rate, increasing your graduation rate, and improving those gaps or closing the gaps across the entire school district. And those are things, and attendance, and those are some things that we really have an eye on. Last week I received a phone call from Dr. Johnston. and he said that he would like to visit, and he would like to visit very soon. When he said October 15th, that was a little sooner than I think I thought he would come. But his reasoning for coming is that he has read our accelerated improvement plan. He thinks that it's an excellent plan. And with what our plan managers and our plan monitors are saying about the work that we are doing here, they're very enthusiastic and they're very hopeful of where Southbridge is now and where we will be in the fall and the progress that we are making. And so as one of the new commissioners, he wanted to come and take a look at what we're doing. So I think that that's very exciting, and I think it speaks to the work that we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll move on to agenda item number 12, school committee actions. Budget transfer requests in the amount of $555,118.45 per the budget line transfer request sheet. Perhaps, Mr. Osborne, you could jump in.
Sure. What you're seeing here is really sort of a four-way transfer with a grant. We have a certain number of staff salaries that are formally on grants right now. And when we put staff salaries on grants, DESE automatically takes out 9% of those salaries, the direct full-time salaries, for MTRS obligations. I have no idea why. It's just what they do. So anytime we have salaries on some of those grants, we automatically lose 9% of those salary amounts up front. So in an effort, this was brought up during the course of budget talks last year. As a result, we've started making an effort to gradually move staff salaries off of grants. The 240 grant is one of the more flexible grants. So it's really eligible to immediately move some salaries off of the grant and move tuition money onto the grant. So we're really just doing a swap. It's an item swap that allows us to retain that 9% in the grant. So we'll have 9% or about $50,000 of additional money to spend within that grant. There are other grants that have some salaries in them. The Title I grant, for example, I think some school committee members are aware of. We're going to continue to work to gradually move some of those off. Title I is less flexible. It's a supplement, not supplant program, and salaries are typically deemed more acceptable than some other options. We can't just move things on and off quite as easily. So this represents a $0 impact on our overall budget. It moves some tuition off of the general fund and onto a grant, and moves some salaries from tuition that we would have spent on tuition into, or some money we would have spent on tuition into salaries. So the net is a $555,118.45 swap that has a net $0 impact on the budget, but frees up $50,000 in the grant. So it's our recommendation that we do this.
Thank you.
Sir.
Do you want to make...
One question.
Sure.
Can we discuss now, or do we have to make a motion and all that?
Why don't we make a motion?
So moved.
Motion. Mr.
Second.
Abrahamson makes a motion, seconded by Dr. Page, that the school committee approves a budget transfer in the amount of $555,118.45 per the attached request dated October 14th, 2014. So we have a motion and a second, now discussion. Dr. Page.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just one clarification. So what will happen moving forward next year? Do these, so these are now being moved into the general fund?
Yep. Next year, we will continue to fund more salaries on the general fund, but less tuition on the general fund, and we will continue to put it onto that tuition onto the 240 grant. So we'll absorb more salaries, but we'll move more tuition onto the 240 grant, which is that's the special education support grant. It's a special education grant.
Okay. And so just a quick follow-up. So will that have an impact on our operating budget for next year? Are you projecting we're going to get the same 240 grant funds?
Shouldn't change anything. Those are allocation grants. They're based on our needs, our SPED populations. Title I is based on our town's poverty rate. So it really doesn't change anything very much. So if we can start moving salaries off of those, it's helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Levy?
I just want clarification that we're not taking anything away from SPED.
No, nothing. In fact, they will gain money in the process. There will be an additional $50,000 that we would normally send a check to the state, to the MTRS system for $50,000. Instead, we are able to keep that money for ourselves. So there's $50,000 more to support special education. Okay. I know it seems strange.
Welcome to public education.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, so we have a motion, and we have a second. So the motion would be, the question is that the school committee approve a budget transfer in the amount of $555,118.45 per the attached request dated October 14th, 2014. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes?
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
All yes.
Thank you. We move on now to unfinished business. We have a second reading of policy file EFC food services this evening. And it's very brief, so I will just go ahead and read this one. Food services, the Southbridge Public School District Food Services Department operates under the guidance of the National School Lunch Program to ensure that all students in the schools receive proper nourishment. All procedures that the district agrees to carry out in order to participate in the National School Lunch, Breakfast, and other food programs will be followed. This replaces the free and reduced price food services policy of December 2007, as it's no longer needed due to the CEP, the Community Eligibility Provision. Next, we have, under unfinished business, this is a request that grew out of kind of the committee of the whole meeting. It's regarding a physical education teacher position or a wellness teacher position at Southbridge Middle High School. I don't know, Ms. Gardner, if you'd like to speak to this agenda item.
As mentioned last week when we met, we continue to see that those classes are extremely large, and again, it's for safety, it's for students need this class. They need 4 courses of it to graduate from high school, and we would just really appreciate if this were funded because it will end a lot of concerns that we have about student safety.
Thank you. Mr. Osborne, do you want to speak to this one as well, since you prepared a memo?
Yeah, at the committee of the whole meeting last week, I believe, was that on the 6th, do I want to say? I'm losing track of days. We were tasked with how, we alluded to some general areas where we thought we could eke some savings. And we were sort of tasked with, okay, show us where those savings are going to be. Give us some specific line items. So we went back to our budget, back to what we expected to spend, and found 3 very specific items. And in any budget, you're going to have items where you realize you're going to spend more, and other items where you realize you're going to spend less. We are now realizing a need to spend more in teaching services, and there are also some areas where we are going to be able to spend a little bit less. One is there are some Title I carryover funds from a district-wide social worker where we ended up expending a little bit less than we anticipated spending. So we have actually about $29,000 available in that differential. There are, one of the things that we realized as we went back to the drawing table, as we are allotted the Title I grant, we put a number of salaries that are being paid in the Title I grant onto the general fund as sort of a holding place until we get final approval. We were approved, we are approved, we were approved as of early August for the Title I grant, but we don't get the actual funding notice often until mid-September. And those accounts are actually just now being set up, even though it's October. We are going to do what's called a journal entry and move a sum of money off of the general fund and onto the Title I grant. which will be an offset of about $44,675. And then finally, we did talk about, this is the Ombudsman's program, where we budgeted during the budget process. We were still in negotiations with Ombudsman for final price. We were working from an estimate of $10,000 per student anticipated in that program for a total of $250,000. The final contract, as I read it, is for $227,500. Therefore, we have about $22,500 available that we will not be spending on that contract. It's worth noting that both the social worker and the Title I, if nothing is done, if we choose not to vote here tonight, those will shift $73,000 back into salaries, whether we vote or not tonight, because those are both salary items where that funding will be returned to.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Would anybody like to make a motion so we can begin discussion?
Madam Chair, I move
Yes.
that we're doing 13B, that a physical education teacher position at Southbridge High School that we appoint a new teacher at that level.
Thank you. Is there a second?
So moved.
Seconded by Dr. Page. A motion was made by Mr. Abrahamson, seconded by Dr. Page. So there's a motion on the floor that the school committee approve a new physical education teacher position. Is there any discussion? No. Dr. Page.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a follow-up to last time. We had a little bit of discussion about whether or not this would make sense to be more or less a permanent type of position. And I don't know, I'd like to ask maybe through you to the superintendent, do the enrollments in the physical education and social studies, because this is kind of a double thing. We're actually solving a social studies problem and a physical education problem. Is this something that's going to be anticipated to be a recurring thing based on our anticipated enrollment and scheduling going forward after this academic year?
Yes, it is. And as you know, we're collecting some more data that will show some of the reasons why we need this historically. As we look back, and as I mentioned earlier, some of the Mass Core grad courses were not offered to our students in the past, and so we're sort of correcting some wrongs that had historically happened. So we will continue to have the need for social studies, and we will continue to have the need for the physical education positions so that we make sure we offer our students all of the opportunities that not only do they deserve, but they need in order to receive a diploma in the Commonwealth.
Thank you. Sure.
Okay, so then one quick follow-up to that is then the way this memorandum is written, it's asking for a one-year contract for the position. And what my question would be, is that going to be a limitation in terms of attracting the type of person that you really want? Since we're going to need this going forward, shouldn't it be just adding the position that would become a recurring position in the district?
Fortunately or unfortunately, if you're a physical education teacher right now, there are many, many more candidates than there are jobs. So I think that is one area. For instance, in math, you know, we beg for math teachers. But for physical education teachers and actually social studies teachers right now, there's actually more applicants than there are positions. So for any position in physical education or in social studies / history, within 2 days you can have upwards of 200 candidates. So, you know, it may not be a great opportunity for someone who is looking something long-term if we do it as a single year, but I know that we will have highly qualified candidates who do apply. But I think as we take a look at some of the numbers and we analyze a little bit more of data, I think that we can actually, with data, show why we need these positions. I mean, right now it's clearly obvious when we have the large numbers, but I think that's why we chose to go ahead with it this way. I mean, again, you know, one thing that I have promised is that we will be, you know, fiscally honest and really look at the needs that we have. And so I think as we move forward, we will have data to support it. But right now, to fill this safety need, I think it's very necessary.
Just for clarification, the motion is on the addition. There was no, even though the recommendation on the memo spoke to a one-year commitment, Mr. Abraham's motion did not put that on it. It could be added through an amendment, or we can leave it as is, in which case that position becomes a permanent position till no longer needed.
Well, I mean, I guess if the superintendent's not 100% sure that it's going to be long-term and you want to look at more data, then I would say just leave it as it is as 1 year. But I was just wanting to ask the question for clarification in terms of, you know, you don't want to hire somebody that's going to be yet another, if there's somebody who only wants the job for a year, you know what I mean? And then you're going to have to deal with another position next year.
Well, I think just in the first 3 years of teaching them themselves, I mean, I think that we fall into that because at the end of the first year, you can release a teacher for absolutely no reason. So it can be that we lose numbers, that we don't have the interest in a certain course. So, I mean, anytime you're a first-year teacher, you're sort of hoping that you get to come back the next year. And, you know, unfortunately, it doesn't always happen.
Is there any other discussion, Mr.
I just have one question. The addition of this physical education teacher, are we sure that this is going to alleviate the class size issue that we're having, just this one position?
Ms. Gardner?
That was for Ms. Gardner.
We know that it will certainly help with where we are because I know, especially for second semester, and I'm remembering the data, is that we're going to be able to divide 80 students who are currently divided into 2 teachers by 3. So, I mean, again, we're not going to have 15 students in a physical education class, but it's going to bring our numbers to under 30. And that's pretty common, a number for physical education, I think, in districts that I've worked in.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other discussion, Mrs. Donovan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Superintendent Gardner. Is this position only going to affect high school students, or is it going to be a position that will split between middle school and high school students?
Well, I think with our specialty positions, that's something moving forward that, we will have to look at. This year, it would certainly only be in high school. But I think that it's a position as we move forward, it's going to give us some flexibility in scheduling. So, for instance, if we had a semester where there were fewer high school students taking physical education that semester, it would give us an opportunity to have another elective. We know that our middle school, and I'm not asking for more teachers right now, but we know that in the middle school that we don't have a lot of choice in electives. I mean, there are very few electives in our middle school, and that's something probably moving forward that we would like to look at. But obviously, we need to think about student achievement in the core classes right now to maximize that achievement and get us out of level 4. But it will give us more flexibility as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. And my second question through you, Madam Chair, is to Mr. Osborne. I'm just not familiar, Aaron, and pardon my ignorance, I'm not that familiar with the Title I carryover funds.
Yep.
Is that the name of the grant, or are these funds that have not been expended in a particular grant and now we're able to use them for another purpose?
They were not expended. The title grants are effectively 2-year grants. So our 2013-2014 grant, the monies that we did not use are eligible to carry over. The good thing about them already being in salaries is, we could move them to another purpose if we wanted to, but they're already in salaries. It will sweep to salaries, and we can use that salary money to pay some of this position.
And what were to happen if so I understand exactly what you said, but if we were not if we were not going to use these funds, this $29,000, you said would just go back into salaries. What happens if I don't know how to, I guess at the end of the day, we need to make sure we spend that money somehow, because we will not get that money back in a future grant.
If we do not spend it by the end of this year, we get to write a check to DESE.
And by this year, is it calendar year December 31st, or is it school year June 30th?
It actually extends. It's an odd grant that extends September to September, but realistically, it's a school year grant for all intents and purposes.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. I'm all set. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is there any further discussion? I would just ask Ms. Collins at this point, could you read the motion back, just so we have clarification on the question? Mr. Abrahamson's motion.
Okay, sure. It was a motion made by Mr. Abrahamson to approve a new physical education teacher position. That was it. That's all I have.
Do you want to say where?
I was just thinking, maybe amending it. Do we want to include the position, or just leave it as is?
It doesn't need to be amended, I don't think.
Okay. We can add it in?
Well, it was stated on the agenda that Well, I don't know.
Okay.
That's not what you said.
I think I said add.
Okay. So the question is to approve a new physical education teacher position at Southbridge Middle High School. Thank you. And if there's no further discussion, can I have a roll call, please?
Wait, can I ask
I'm
one
sorry.
clarification? So is there a difference between, so the memo that went with this, is the motion's written differently. This was for a 1 year, right?
Right.
So should we amend the motion to say it's 1 year rather than approving a new position?
I thought that that was the intent of Mr. Abrahamson's motion, was to not include the year.
Correct. I think you would have to amend if you wanted to do it to 1 year. I think it does not, as the superintendent said, after 1 year, the person can be let go for no reason anyway. So this gives some flexibility.
Are we good? Okay, thank you. Can I have a roll call, please?
Sure. Mrs. Quinney?
Yes?
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes?
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
All yes?
Thank you. The motion carries. Next, under Agenda Item 13C, we have the signing of the SEA Unit C contract. I don't know, Ms. Quinney just wants to speak briefly to it, or I know you did earlier, but I didn't know if there were any members from SEA Unit C here.
I don't think they're here. It's been a long night. So we will sign it. I will pass it along. This side is signed it. This is the most recent contract that I sent to you all. It's the exact printout of that. I don't know if anybody had any questions. But that's it. Once it's signed, it'll go to SEA Unit C. They'll sign it, and then it will be officially official, although it kind of became officially official once it was ratified.
Thank you. It'll be available for public record
Yes.
purposes once we sign and they sign. Available for viewing in the superintendent's office. So while people are signing, I'll just state under new business that the next regular school committee meeting will be held on October 28th, 2014 at 7 p.m. in council chambers. As a note, the district quarterly AIP report will be given, so representatives from DESE will be here to update us on the AIP report at that meeting, along with some other regular business. And next, we have some readings of policy files. We have the first reading of policy file BEDBA, a consent agenda. I'd like to read that. Under consent agenda, 1, purpose. The purpose of the policy is to allow the use of a consent agenda. Number 2, general statement of policy. In order for more efficient administration of meetings, the school committee may elect to use a consent agenda for the passage of non-controversial items or items of a similar nature. Number 3, under consent agenda, to expedite business at school committee meeting, the Southbridge School Committee approves the use of a consent agenda, which includes those items considered to be routine in nature. The consent agenda will appear on the regular agenda following the call to order roll call. Any item which appears on the consent agenda may be removed on request by a member of the school committee and placed on the regular agenda where appropriate, under school committee actions, unfinished business, or new business. The remaining items on the consent agenda will be voted on by a single motion. The approved motion will be recorded in the minutes, including a listing of all items appearing on the consent agenda. Items which may be placed on the consent agenda include, but are not limited to, the approval of committee minutes, correspondence requiring no action, committee and staff reports, updates or background reports provided for informational purposes only, appointments requiring school committee confirmation, approval of certain contracts, final approval of proposals that have been previously and thoroughly discussed, policy readings, confirmation on pro forma items or actions that are required by bylaws but need no discussion, and future meeting dates. That's the first reading of the policy. Yes, sir.
That should be pro forma.
Pro forma. Oh, I'm sorry, pro forma. Thank you. We'll make that change. Next is the first reading of policy file BEDB, meeting agenda. This policy needed to be changed as a result of the plan to adopt the consent agenda. The superintendent, conferring with the chair of the school committee, will prepare the meeting agenda. The committee will follow the order of business established by the agenda, except that the order of business may be altered at the chair's discretion if circumstances so warrant. Example, for the convenience of visitors or individuals appearing before the committee. Items of business may be suggested by any individual. The inclusion of such items, however, will be at the discretion of the chair of the committee, with the exception of a proposed agenda item requested by at least 4 committee members. A staff member who wishes to have a topic scheduled on the agenda should submit a request through the superintendent. The agenda will also provide for time when any citizen may speak before the school committee. The agenda, together with supporting materials, will be distributed to school committee members at least 3 working days prior to the meeting to permit adequate time to prepare for the meeting. Agendas will be posted and made available to the public. The duration of the meeting will be scheduled for 90 minutes, and if additional time is desired, then a motion can be made to extend the time for a specified amount of time, which can be granted by majority vote. Again, this is first reading only. If anybody has any suggestions, comments, they can submit those through any member of the policy subcommittee. Dr. Page, Mrs. Congdon, myself, and Mrs. Quinney is the alternate. And then finally, the first reading of policy BEDB-E is the agenda format. So this would change. So at regular school committee meetings, the following will be the customary order of business. Number 1, or Roman numeral 1, welcome and pledge of allegiance. Number 2, public input. Number 3, call to order roll call. Number 4, approval of the consent agenda. Number 5, chairperson's announcements. Number 6, reports, to include the representative of the Student Advisory Committee, being 6A. 6B is the school committee reports. Those would be subcommittee reports. 6C would be the finance director, and 6D would be the superintendent. Roman numeral 7, school committee actions. Roman numeral 8, unfinished business. Roman numeral 9, new business. Roman numeral 10, member forum. Roman numeral number 11 is executive session, and Roman numeral 12 would be a return to open session or adjournment. The customary order of business may be altered at the chair's discretion if circumstances so warrant. That just aligns with language of the previous policy. Again, first readings of those policies. And now we'll move on to member forum. Is there any member who would like to speak this evening? Dr. Page?
I just basically wanted to say that I had an opportunity a week ago from this past Friday to tour the Southbridge Middle High School complex with Principal Earls. And I would like to thank the superintendent for arranging that, and I would like to personally thank Ms. Earls for her hosting me. What turned into what I expected to be about a 1-hour tour turned into 2, and that was because it's a big place and there was a lot to see. And there's a lot going on, and I had a really good opportunity to see something that really impressed me quite a bit, and that was really active learning going on in every classroom that we visited. In general, students were very engaged. They seemed to be very interested in the work that was going on. A couple of it was Friday, so there was a lot of testing going on, so we couldn't visit, all of the classrooms, and wasn't able to see everything that I would have liked to have seen, but that's certainly understandable. I think the only things that I really noticed in terms of being what I would consider to be issues that we could potentially address would have to do really with infrastructure. The technology computer system at that time, that's been solved. That was one of the big ones in my mind. And the other one is perhaps some additional computer resources in the library I think might be useful, because my understanding is there isn't really a computer lab in the building. And I remember back when we were the first tour that I ever went, before the building was even being constructed, the learning pods, the way it's structured with the grouped areas of learning pods, the hallways out there were designed at the time to include a bunch of tables and chairs, and I believe at the time there was supposed to be some computer workstations there. And so that it would provide breakout opportunities for students to meet with teachers, for teachers to have team meetings and all of that kind of stuff. And my best guess is that probably what happened is when it came crunch time to get the building open, those were expenses that probably were outside of the budget or something or so forth at the time. And so what I noticed, people are making do, some chairs and things are being moved out there, their students were sitting quietly reading, but I think that's something that was one of the things I think we might want to address going forward. And I would defer to Principal Earls through the superintendent to whether or not that's something to address. I was really impressed with the technology program and the advancements that it's made, and I'm glad to see we have shops. back. And I've got some ideas, maybe talk through the superintendent to the principal later on about how we might be able to capitalize on those assets to broaden our community involvement in the district and bring people in from the outside to maybe use those facilities for some kind of opportunities for engagement and so forth. So in general, it was a fantastic visit. I really am pleased with what I saw. And to the other principals, my plan is to work my way through the elementaries as well and have the same kind of opportunity. It's just right now my schedule during the day, school day, is very difficult, but I'm hoping that'll free up a little bit and we'll be able to get to that in the next couple of weeks or so. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Did you want to address something?
Yes, if I could address a couple of things from your email. I have taken a look at them. From what I understand, and again, history is kind of hard with all of us being new, that when the building was built, the chairs that were for in-classroom had wheels on them, and kids were rolling all over the classrooms. And so the chairs that were in the hallways were then moved into classrooms, and the chairs with wheels ended up back at Cole Ave, and we have a ton of those at Cole Avenue. But in meeting with the fire chief, he was a little concerned about how many chairs that we put out there just because of safety issues. And so that's something that, you know, we'll have to talk about with him and what we're going to put there. But apparently and I can understand that rolly chairs in high school and middle school aren't necessarily a great idea. They're not good for me.
We can work out the details later.
Right.
My recollection is that wasn't the plan. It was to have, like, you know, tables where people could sit around. And there are areas in those pods that wouldn't disrupt the flow of traffic. And I mean, of course, the fire inspector would have to check off on it.
Right, but we are looking into it, so I just wanted you to know that
that
we
might be
followed
something
up
that
on
we
it.
would consider for capital budget, or if maybe there's some resources, I've heard that the old middle school is full of furniture. Don't know whether that's true or not, but.
I was under the impression the town had sold it.
Don't know. Maybe that's something to look into.
We had turned that building and I guess all its contents with it over to the town for their surplus, but worth looking into for sure. We could address that with the budget meeting because we do have a committee of the whole budget meeting on November 5th. That would be a good time to start discussing those things. Does any other member have anything you'd like to add this evening? Mr. Lebo?
First, I would just like to make a comment, or actually just talk about my experience at homecoming. Cam spoke about it earlier, and I got to say that it was an awesome turnout from the community. I was very impressed and glad to see everybody out there. There was, as was promised, a lot of food out there, and it was a great time, and it was a great win for us, and it was a good time. I also want to mention that the PTA is having their Butter Braids fundraiser right now, and it's going around with your elementary students. The last day for that is Friday, October 17th. So if you haven't already purchased, get out there and purchase some of the Butter Braids from your elementary students. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody on this side? Mrs. Donovan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank a couple people in our community. I had the opportunity last Thursday, along with Lauren McLaughlin and Chris Oliva. We attended the Y Symposium, and it was a leadership symposium trying to promote youth development in our community, and it was fantastic. It really, really was. There were so many different community groups that were represented there, and we also had District Attorney Joe Early. It was run by Glenn Juco of the YMCA and Attorney Rob Caprera. State Representative Peter Durant was there, our town manager. Councilors Moriarty and Carrasco were also there, and there were just so many other community groups that were represented, and we just really talked about some of the successes that some of these groups have had in our community so far. We talked at great length about some of the critical issues that face all of us who are working in our communities or trying to provide better opportunities for our youth. And we also looked at ways or come up with ideas of how certain organizations, including the school district, could partnership with the YMCA to further promote social development and better opportunities for our youth. So I just wanted to really thank Glenn Juco and Attorney Rob Crepera for that, because it's very, very important that we keep forgetting sometimes, but this really is, when it comes down to our kids, it is a community effort, and it isn't just one piece. And clearly the YMCA is reaching out to touch the lives of so many kids, and we're trying to do it within our schools, and they're trying to do it once we walk out of the building. So I just wanted to thank them for that. Like Mr. Olivo, I was also at homecoming. Food was fantastic, and a job well done by our football team. And that is all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Olivo, did you have?
I just wanted to add to that. I wrote it down and I forgot to mention that meeting at the YMCA. I just wanted to add that everybody's concerns and everybody's desires were the same. Everybody shared the same ideas and the concerns for the kids in this community, and came up with great ideas. And moving forward, I hope to see those ideas implemented, because there's a lot of great ideas that came out of it, and it was a very productive 2 hours. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Mrs. Quinney, did you have something?
Good night.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I just wanted to say something very quickly. On October 8th, there was a 9th grade parent night at Southbridge Middle High School. It was the purpose was to bring 9th grade parents into the school to show them kind of what a 4-year map would look like for students, what courses would be required in order to obtain credits in order to graduate. Obviously, there was a lot of work that went into preparing it, and I'd like to thank Mrs. Earls, I'd like to thank Mrs. Hatch, Mr. Coggins was there, and Ms. Plant was there. Unfortunately, the administrators outnumbered the families that were there. There were only 3 families that showed up for the 9th grade students. That was initially disheartening, I think, given that the work that people had put into it. My husband and I and myself attended, along with 2 other families. And but what initially started off, I guess, as something kind of sad, turned into something really wonderful when the families that were there and the people that were there and the administrators that were there started talking about family engagement and ways to draw people to the meetings for something so important, because there had been such a great turnout for open house, and then to have a drop-off for this particular presentation was a little bit disheartening. But anyway, that being said, again, I think this is one of the only times I've ever heard of this being even offered to families, so it has to start somewhere. Don't give up. Continue to do it and build on the 3 families that you have. I think you can only go up from this year. That's the good news. And I just want to thank everybody for their efforts. And in general, I want to thank everybody for their efforts to date for this school year. The comments that I am hearing in the community are astounding. I mean, really astounding. People come up to me and hug me as if I'm personally responsible for something. I can assure you I am not. I can assure you that a lot of good people have put in a lot of hard work, but I have had staff, I have had parents, I have had community members say that it has been a wonderfully quiet, efficient beginning of the school year. I think that's a tribute to all the work that went in preparing for it. I think it's a tribute to the people that are here, and I just want to sincerely say thank you for the work that's been done to date, and keep up the good work. It's worth it. Thank you. If there's no other business, agenda item number 15 is executive session. There is no executive session this evening, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Abrahamson makes the motion. Mrs. Congdon seconds. By show of hands, please. Look at that. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Have a good night.